Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And a little while back over on my Twitch channel, shameless plug, twitch.tv/Gavin Verhey, go follow for more, I did a stream where I had people ask me about cards and then I told stories about them. And it was a huge hit and I put it up on YouTube afterward, which you can watch right here. The little known thing though is I did a second one of these streams, which I did not put up on YouTube afterward. I was saving it for a rainy day, and that day is today. So I'm going to show it to you right now. I should note a couple of things. First of all, this happened in the past. This was before Innistrad Midnight Hunt came out, so the stories are a little bit old, but they're about old cards, so they're still as relevant as they ever were, really. Second of all, it's all live and spur of the moment, so it's a little bit different than your normal Good Morning Magic content, but I hope you really enjoy it. Take it away, Past Gavin. Okay, so I think a random guy has been keeping track in the chat of all the cards you all have been suggesting. A random guy, do you have a current list of all the cards? And if so, drop it in the chat and I will start running through them. Perfect. Wow, holy smokes, there's already so many in here. I'm gonna start running through them. Now, if you missed my little spiel, what's gonna happen, if there's a card you wanna hear about, put it in the chat. I'll tell a story about it. I started working at Wizards with Return to Ravnica, so anything from there on is kind of fair game. If it's before then, I can tell a story or a fact about it, maybe, depending on what it is. And I will try and do my best giving stories about things. You know, this is all off the top of my head. I do have software where I can go look in our databases, but I think having the database of every Magic card that's going to come up in the future alongside a live stream is probably a dangerous proposition. So I'm gonna go off the top of my head with these folks. So we're gonna kick it off right now with a certain random guy's card, Tesseret, Master of the Bridge. So let me pull that up here. So Tesseret, Master of the Bridge. This was the buy a box promo for War of the Spark. This card has a bit of an interesting story in that it has affinity for artifacts on it. There was a lot of discussion around this because it's a standard legal card. Like we've done a lot of putting old mechanics on commander cards, no problem, right? You'll open up a commander set and find all manner of evoke and phasing, right, or whatever the thing is. But with Tesseret, this was going to be a standard legal card, and Dave Humphreys, lead designer, had this idea to give everything affinity for artifacts, and then he thought, what if I just actually put it on here? And there's a lot of debate around if standard could kind of do this, a one-of mechanic, and the answer was yes. And we ended up making it, and everyone was totally fine with it. I didn't see that point really brought up as any cause for concern anywhere, for the most part, so it turned out great. I'm curious from people in the chat if you would like to see more cards like this in the future, standard cards with one of mechanics, or if you're pretty happy with our current block structure of set structure of, hey, this is a set, it's got 4 main mechanics, you don't really find things outside of that. Or would you be happy if at rare sometimes you found a offering card or something? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. All right, going on to the next card here. Let's see. I'm going to pull this list up and scroll off my screen. Okay, here we go. We're going to Team Dark Beginnings, Karn, Scion of Urza. So, Karn, Scion of Urza. This went through a lot of iterations, tried it at a lot of different costs, because we're making a colorless planeswalker. And we did do this once before. We made Ugin, right, who was a colorless planeswalker, but he was like an expensive planeswalker. This was going to be a colorless planeswalker that any deck could play. Thank you for the follow, Magma the Lionhearted. Much appreciated. Means a lot. And so a lot of work and iteration was put into this. And there were a lot of versions where this was just in every deck, right? It's like, oh man, if you're playing in FFL, you should be playing Karn because it's a 4-mana colorless planeswalker. So we had to do a lot of tweaking and a lot of work on the knobs to try and get it right. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. I feel like this hit a great spot. It was like a 2-of in some decks, right? Didn't get played everywhere. And I think it's really cool that it makes this golem token, which we then called back to when we did Urza Lord High Artificer, right? We made this golem on Urza 2 that's a fun callback. So that makes me really happy. And yeah, I remember playing a mono black control deck with Karn back when it was closer to just like drawing you a card on the plus, basically. And it was really strong. Not that it was never just straight draw a card, but yeah, Dave Humphreys is a fantastic designer. and he did a really great job with getting Karn just right here. By the way, fun fact, Dave Humphreys, lead designer of Dominaria, also the lead designer of Fate Reforged, where Ugin was made. Okay, I have more fun facts about Karn, but if I learned something from last time, it's that I should probably go... if I tell every single story about every card, it'll take forever to get to your cards. So we'll go through them. I'll save some of these when I clip for another time. In the meantime, though, let's talk about Branchwalker JV, who was asking about Kumena, the Tyrant of Orazca. Nice name, by the way, Branchwalker. Appreciate it. Isn't that a card, Merfolk Branchwalker, right? So clearly you like the Ixalan stuff. Right, so Ixalan was doing this tribal thing. It was doing Merfolk in blue and green. We had never done blue-green Merfolk before. I mean, there's Gaia Skyfolk, as we talked about in the last stream. But we'd never done blue-green Merfolk before, and besides that one card. And we had to figure out kind of what that meant. What did it mean for there to be blue-green Merfolk? And one of the cool things about it is we got to tap into green abilities for Merfolk Tribal that we didn't normally have. So the first two abilities on Kumena I would call bluish abilities. Drawing a card, sure. Can't be blocked this turn, sure. Although green could also potentially draw cards by having creatures. But that last ability is not something that blue would normally do. So it's cool to see kind of the green take on Merfolk. Rivals of Ixalan was also kind of our place to blow out legendaries for the tribes if they didn't get them already. We did Kumena here as a great one for blue-green Merfolk. There were some in the first set as well, but I don't believe they were explicitly Merfolk rewards, right? There's the one that like draws you a bunch of cards for all your creatures. And so we wanted some more cool legendaries and Rivals of Ixalan. We made Kumena. We made, of course, whatever the big dinosaur is called, Zakama, as just really cool, awesome legendaries for that set. A ton of legendary cards, by the way, in Rivals of Ixalan for a set of that size. It's pretty impressive. All right, that was Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca. Let's go out to Exidian, who's asking about Urza Saga or Zabaz. So I covered Urza Saga last time, so I want to talk about Zabaz today. This card makes me smile to no end because of the last line of text, or sorry, the second to last line of text, are destroy target artifact you control. It's an amazing line. I love it so much. So one of the things that's really challenging to do in design is make a 2-color commander that is 1 mana. And also, if you're an artifact deck or tribe, how can we get that to you in the package of an artifact? So Zabaz is kind of threading a needle on a few things here. For one, it's really cool to have an artifact commander in your Artifact Matters modular deck. You want a card with modular to be able to modular your counters onto, for example. And two, it's a 1-drop, so it comes down in your modular commander deck on the first turn, despite being a red-white deck, because as part of the rules of Commander, you can use a red or a if it has it in its rules text, you're good to go for being a red-white card, right? It's got a red symbol and a white symbol there. So when we design commanders, we're always trying to figure out, okay, what does this deck need, and how can we get that to it in the form of a commander? And Zabaz is kind of an unexpected way of getting there, but I think that's probably what Aaron Forsyth and his design team had in mind here. Of course, in addition to being a cool legend to play somewhere, it's also a card that you could build a fun modular deck around. Probably not modern competitive modern playable. Maybe, I don't think so, but a pretty fun card to have. That's by the way why you also have the white ability in there, right? To make sure that it has a white activation so you can get that white on the card. Because once again, you need to have the red and white mana symbols for it to be a white color identity. All right, that was Zabaz. Thank you so much, Exidian. Let's go on to Yellow Pie 84 with Arnie Brokenbrow. Which, by the way, if you have not listened to it, there's a great song done by Jonathan Young that he did for Kaldheim that is a song all about Arnie Brokenbrow. It's totally awesome. Highly recommend it. Go and check it out on YouTube if you haven't seen it already. Oh, by the way, really fast, do I sound okay to everyone? I kind of think I moved my mic around a little bit when I was changing over cameras. So hopefully I sound all right. If not, you can let me know. Jonathan Young, by the way, I've actually played Commander with him a number of times over the pandemic. Fun fact is he's a huge Commander player. It's not just like he was paid to do this song. He was so excited to do it. He did an amazing job on it. And when we play, he's like, yeah, I have, 20, 30, 40 commander decks to play with. He's like super duper into it. Okay, great. Sounds like the audio is fantastic. Okay, Arnie brokenbrow. So here's a question for everyone out there. Ask yourself this for a second. Is this a red ability? Now, it's on a red card, yes, but is this a red ability? We put it on this red card, but normally I would think about, setting base power and toughness. That's a blue thing. Or I'd say about, or maybe it's a white thing, like in Mirror Entity, right? So you look at other cards, you look at like Mirror Entity, right? Sets every creature's power toughness to this thing. You look at blue, it's got all kinds of cards, like some card called something transformation. I can't remember the name. There's so many of them. Oh well. Anyway, but anyway, it could be a number of different colors. What makes this red? How is this one red? Well, here's what's going on here. The stuff with Arnie is, first of all, it can only be used while attacking, which is a very red thing to do. Second of all, it only works on the power, not the toughness. So you're not saving your creatures by changing its power on the boast. You're just making your creature larger. Red can definitely get +X+O effects, and this, at best, is really just a +X+O effect. So that's kind of what's going on. And of course, yes, it is Kasmina's transformation. Thank you, Raidbecker320 in the chat. I appreciate it. So yes, right. If you think about it, it's really just a big +X+O effect. You're not impacting the toughness, so this is okay to be red. But if it was pumping up the toughness, well, maybe then it starts to get it being a different colored card, right? So it's amazing how those tiny little things can really impact a design here. I want to go back to something Exidian said in the chat. Exidian says that they were surprised that red-white was chosen as modular colors. Normally, +1/+1 counter stuff is green. It's true, but with modular, a couple things are going on there. One is that green gets a lot of +1/+1 counter stuff, but not a lot of artifacts, right? Green is not about artifact creatures. In fact, it's normally hating nature as much as it can, so it made sense to put it somewhere else. And second of all, we're just on the lookout for more things for red-white to do. We just saw in Strixhaven the awesome Lorehold doing some artifacty stuff in that commander deck. So it's, expanding that out a little bit made a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to the next card. Thank you again so much, YellowPie84, for your question about Arnie Brokenbrow. Let's talk about Chief is Dead suggestion here with Cosmic Intervention. This is, right, isn't this the Draw the Game card? Oh no, that's Divine Intervention, which if you've never seen it before is a real trip. I'll pull it up here for those. I'm just gonna cascade through cards here really fast. I promise I'll get back to the one you were asking about. But if you've never seen Divine Intervention, it's this wonky card where it comes into play with 2 counters, and then in 2 turns, the game is a draw. If you don't kill off the enchantment, the game becomes a draw. Anyway, that's what the card I was thinking of. I might have a fun story to talk about that card if someone suggests it, but let's go back to a second to Cosmic Intervention. So here's the origin story of Cosmic Intervention. So this is in the blue-white commander deck with Kaldheim. And we've started doing these set-aligned commander decks now. The first one was with Ikoria. Now we've got more coming out. We've got more with Innistrad later this year. We just released ones with D&D and Strixhaven and so on. Now, when we're making these decks, we're often trying to blow out themes from the set. And for example, 2 of the themes in Kaldheim, Black Agreed Elves, and blue-white, or not blue-white necessarily, but Foretell is a theme out of Kaldheim. So we decided we wanted to do a Foretell deck and put it in blue and white. It made a lot of sense because we could reward you for casting things from outside the game or playing things from outside the game, which is something blue-white has a lot of. It has blinking stuff too, so there's a lot of synergies there. But what we realized is that we couldn't just grab enough Foretell cards from the main set to make it work, because there's only one set of Foretell cards to come from. So we knew we would have to make some more Foretell cards, and that's where Cosmic Intervention came from. And you've probably noticed us doing this, for example, when you see like the Mutate deck from Ikoria having more new Mutate cards as one great example, or when you see this Foretell deck having more Foretell cards. Now, as far as the actual design of it, we're trying to find more things for white to do in Commander, and one of the great things it can do is save its own permanence, Teferi's Protection style. This card has a bit of a, well, I'm not going to say unintended because we knew about it, but a bit of a tricky thing you can do with it, where you can use this with fetch lands or lands that sacrifice to ramp your mana. And it's not immediately obvious this card can ramp your mana, but like, you know, you've got a mass amount of Evolving Wilds and some fetch lands, you play this off Foretell, you then crack them, and it's any permanent, so those will come back right into play at the end of the turn, which is pretty fun. So that is Cosmic Intervention. Thank you for the question on that very much. Okay, I'm going to ask for a certain random guy to post in the chat the current list of cards that we're looking for. So I can get that back loaded up again. And I want to say, by the way, thanks so much if you're coming by. I really appreciate it. This is only my second stream. And what we're doing here is simple. I'm a Magic designer. You ask about a card, I will tell you stories about that card to the best of my ability. So feel free to drop in a card that you love, a card you want to know about, and we'll see what I have to tell you about it. And it could be anything. Like I might tell you a story entirely different than what you were anticipating. It's a lot of fun. And thank you to everyone who's been following. I see that showing up on the right-hand side of my screen a little bit. I haven't called all of you out by name, but I super duper appreciate it. So thank you so much. Wow, we've got a long list here. Oh no. Okay. All right. So we're going to start going through it. What I am going to do, and I did this last time too, is if you've asked for more than one card, I'm going to come back to you at the end. So try to only ask for one card. If you've asked for multiples, cool, it's not a problem. I'll get them to them, but I'm just going to go and put them at the end so I can get through as many people as I can. Let's go on to Shockosaurus with Metamai, the Ancient. This one has a really fun design story. Okay. I remember working on Theros, and this was really fun. So we're working on Theros, or trying to come up with the Sphinx ability, okay? And what makes the most sense to do is, or not what makes the most sense, but a really cool design that we have is hitting someone and taking another turn. And we keep writing all this stuff on there, like it can't attack during that turn, right? So then it's like, okay, well, you attack, you take another turn, and it says Metamai can't attack during that turn. But then if you like take another turn during that next turn, then it can attack again. So it's really easy to chain extra turn into 2 different turns. Okay. That's a problem. Okay, then we're like, well, what if we tried this other wording? And we just kept finding all these loopholes, right? Either you could make it attack multiple times in the same turn, you could take another turn with another card during your next turn, whatever. Anyway, finally someone, I think Sam Stoddard, came up with the idea of Metamai can't attack during extra turns. It was this huge light bulb moment that went off. It's like huge, oh my gosh, that's awesome, I love it. And that's what we ended up doing on the card. That was a really elegant solve, but I love it because it is such a nonsense line of rules text, right? You just read that and you're like, what do you mean it can't attack during extra turns? But it totally makes sense in the card, for sure. A couple things in the chat I want to call out. Where's my shirt from? This is from Coalesce Apparel. It's a great clothing company. It's owned by Cedric Phillips. They make some really cool stuff. Go check them out. Coalesce Apparel. They have a whole line of pretty fun shirts. And I also want to say hi to everyone out there. I see you, Shivam. Thanks for leaving some notes about fun stories in Magic. That's pretty cool. All right, on to the next question. Oh, I see Shivam's got Tajik in there too. Fun. All right, we'll see what happens when we get there. Let's go into Zaksara, the exemplary. So this is an X mana cost commander, which, by the way, it tickles me to no end that it's got an X in its name. It's just perfect to me. We've tried making a lot of X Matters cards, and very few of them have stuck. There's this Flourishing card from I think from Master Set, Unbound Flourishing. Oh, from Horizon. Sorry, excuse me. There's this Flourishing card that stuck, but we've done very few. The one that I'm the saddest that we didn't make it to print is a card called X Marks the Spot from Ixalan that didn't quite make it, unfortunately, which is all about playing X spells. But I digress. So the deal with Zaksara, how this card came about, is so Corey Bowen is was the lead designer of Commander 2020, and he loves X spells. And he was working on the Mutate deck, and he was trying to figure out something that was different than just Mutate to do, right? Because we often like the face commander of a deck to be like hitting the deck's theme really hard. And then we like one of the backup commanders to do something different, give you a different direction to build the deck. And what Corey noticed is that things that were really good with Mutate were Hydras, because you play a Hydra, it comes into play with a bunch of +1/+1 counters, and then you can mutate on top of it and keep all the counters. And so he likes X spells. It seemed like a natural fit. So that's how Zaksara came about. Is he's like, oh, we're gonna put a bunch of Hydras in this deck anyway. How about we do one for how about you do one for this? So super cool. That's how this card came about. Thank you so much for the question about Zaksara, DM Canes. Really appreciate it. Hello, Torre de Comando in the chat, and I really appreciate you coming in and saying hello today. Thanks to all 44 of you who are hanging out, especially those who survived the great camera apocalypse earlier in the evening. Okay, yes, we'll get that request on the list. On to the next card. Let's talk about Krenko, a mob boss. So this was an I'll put the M13 version here. So M13 had a lot of interesting things going on in it. For example, it was the first, if you can believe it, by the way, this sounds nuts saying today, but a fun trivia fact about M13 is it was the first core set in Magic history to have a multicolored card. Sounds nuts, right? But at the time, that was a huge deal. It had like Nicol Bolas, a Planeswalker in it, and that was big. It was so big, multicolored cards were coming to the core set. Now, of course, that's just commonplace. There's a lot of stuff going on with this set, and one of the things that Zach Hill, the lead designer, was really excited about is doing a cycle of legends. Now, Commander was a thing at this point, and we were just beginning to see Commander take off. So we thought doing some legends would be really cool, and at the time we had this product called the intro packs. And so Zach's idea was he would put a different legend for each color on the front of each of the monocolored intro packs. So for example, Talrand, who has now been reprinted many times, was in this set. There was, let's see if I can remember them all. Talrand was the blue one, Krenko was the red one, Zephyrox, is that what this card is called? The Nephirox, excuse me. Nephirox was the black one. Let's see, who knows the other ones? White, I don't remember. And green? Green was Yeva, Nature's Herald. I remember this one because we changed Yeva at the very last minute. We changed the toughness by 1, so it would die to Flame Slash, was the idea. Oh, Audric. Yes, thank you, Maverick Girl in chat. Paige, thank you so much for coming in tonight. Appreciate it. And good catch on Audric. That's the last one here. And which is cool, actually. Audric originally premiered in a core set, and then later on went to go show up in Innistrad as a character because players loved him so much. So yeah, those were the 5. Anyway, so we want to do something new. Made a lot of sense to do something with goblins because we thought about what would be good for a new player who's approaching. Once again, these are intro packs, and goblins just made a ton of sense. So we made an awesome goblin legend, put it in the set, and put it as the front of this intro pack commander. And turns out it was a hit. This card has done quite a bit, I think, and yeah, people really love this version of Krenko. Many a commander deck has been played using this card. Great question. Thank you so much for that, Panch. Hopefully that tells you a bit about the design of Krenko Mob Boss. Let's move on to the angry Redbird, so angry, who wants to know about Zendersplit and Okwan, which I've got a great story about. So I was lead designer of Battle Bond, which is something that you might hear me say a few times anytime a Battle Bond card comes up, because I love the set so much, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. So, Zendersplit and Okwan. So, we were doing different partner pairs. My partner with Mechanic was figured out, and I knew we were going to do a legendary partner pair for each enemy color combination, and then do the Planeswalkers, Roan and Will, on top of it. There was some backstory about them all competing in a tournament together or something like that, which didn't really end up coming through in the card so much, but at the time, that was the idea. And so I tried to come up with like the coolest pairs for everything. And some of them started mechanically, like Virtus and Gorm was of the idea of a tank and an assassin, right? It's like, what is a thing that you would find in a video game, or it's the tank and an assassin trope, right? Like Gorm the tank and Virtus the assassin. But Creative was also interested in other kinds of opposites. So we did Regna and Krav, who, by the way, I think I told the story last time too, but fun fact, the reason why Regna is called Regna is this is a name that Ken Nagel submitted to me. He submitted the card a name exactly like this. It's because Regna was anger backwards. That's literally how it got its name, and then it just never changed. So fun fact about Regna for you, that's why it's called that. But this was an angel and demon pair. It made a lot of sense. But one idea that Creative had that they loved from the beginning was the idea of a Cyclops and a homunculus teaming up together, because between the two of them, you have two eyes. And that's the story of what's going on here. You've got Okwan the Cyclops and Zendersplit the homunculus. So when I was working on oh, by the way, the one that I had to cut, or the one that didn't make it instead of Virtus and Gorm, which I loved and maybe I would do again if I ever got the chance, is a tree folk and the person who watered it, or a tree folk and the squirrel the squirrel that lived in the tree. I thought those were both really fun partners. Maybe someday we'll see that. Anyway, the actual card you're asking about. Finally, enough rambling. Let's get into talking about Zendersplit and Okwan. So for blue-red, the obvious thing to do was spells, right? Okay, blue-red spells. We've done it a million times. Makes sense. But what if we could do something else? And so I could not figure out exactly what I wanted to do until I came across coin flipping. And often when I'm looking for commanders, which is what I knew these were going to be used for, because in Battle Bond you play two-headed giant, but then afterwards, what are you going to do with those cards? Well, commander's the obvious choice. Coin flipping didn't have a commander. So this could be it. We can make a coin flipping commander here with Zendersplit and Okwan. So I did. The exact ability actually came from a hole filling exercise. I don't know whose idea it was, but we riffed on it. It came up with this. And I'm super happy with it. It's actually one of my favorite commander decks to play is Okwan and Zendersplit. It can kill people out of nowhere. I have attacked for hundreds of thousands of damage with Okwan. It's pretty fun. So anyway, there's a story for you there. Let's move on to Kithkin Guy, who's asking about either Wizened Sen or Springjack Shepherd. I'll talk about Wizened Sen. Because that says an interesting factoid about this. Water time. Okay. So the deal with Wizened Sen is, so we were making, when we made Lorwyn, we knew we'd want to give plenty of bonuses to creatures. And one of the most common wells we go into with bonuses for creatures is +1/+1, which is what you see here on Wizened Sen. It's been done tons of times. In fact, this exact mechanical ability, I think, has shown up in every single color. Red's gotten +1/+1 on cards like Goblin King. There's the Merfolk from Rivals of Ixalan I can never remember the name of, but that gives things +1/+1. So many tribes under the sun have gotten this +1/+1 bonus. I don't need to go through them all because we'd be here for hours. And often for constructed, this kind of anthem thing is really, really nice. But one thing that we've noticed recently is with so many people playing Commander now, +1/+1 to your tribe is actually not nearly as good in Commander as it is in normal standard constructed or in a modern or something like that. Unless you're making tokens. If you're making tokens, of course, they're great. But in Commander, it's not quite as hot. And the reason for that is because even though you might go wide, the extra +1/+1 for winning combats and dealing a bit of extra damage is not nearly as important as resiliency, as drawing more copies of that creature, and so on. So when it's in standard sets, you'll keep seeing cards like this. They're not going away. You're going to see plenty of cards in this vein. But for commander-focused tribes and products, you're not going to see as many +1/+1 effects. So for example, in the set we just did, Commander Legends, which had the pirate tribe, a lot of those bonuses were focused around like getting treasure, right? So you have cards like Malcolm. Oops, I misspelled that. You have cards like Malcolm, which create treasure. You have cards like Breaches, which draw cards off your opponent's library to cast. Looking for different rewards we can give players. Once again, there'll still be plenty of the +1/+1 stuff. It's not going away, but it used to just be simple. You want an easy tribal reward? Slap a +1/+1 on it. Now we are getting a little more crafty for the purposes of Commander. Great question, Kithkin Guy, and always awesome to see you. Thanks for hanging out and asking a question about your Kithkin. Let's move on to Justin says, Hola. Hola, Justin. I say it back to you. We're going to talk about Carrick. I can never spell this right. Carrick. Okay, so Carrick. This was a story character. I think I might have even talked about this card last time. I can't remember. I'm probably going to skip any cards I get to that I talked about last time, unless I have a different story to tell. But maybe I'll tell a different story this time. Who knows? Let's talk about Carrick. So, Glenn Jones was the lead of Commander 2019, and we started doing this thing of putting what we call the bonus Legends Index. I started doing this in Commander 2018. With Eureka, for example. In fact, did it happen in C17 too? I think it started in C17 as well, right? With Brian Hawley and me creating cards like Balan, where you kind of get like your main legends, and then you also get your like bonus legends. Here's Balan, Wandering Knight. They're right here. And this is really cool because when you buy a commander deck, you don't just get the cards for that deck. You don't just get a blue-red commander deck, but you also get a cool new white legend you can build around. And, we still do this today. We just saw it, for example, with Lashiel in the white-red Lorehold deck. Okay, anyway, going back for a second to Carrick. So, was trying to make a character for this red-black madness deck. And one of the notes I kept giving Glenn was that I really thought his set was coming together. C18 was coming together really, or C19, excuse me, was coming together really well, but it was a bit light on nostalgia. So Glenn went on a hunt for old characters to put in. And I suggested Grevin to him. I basically just asked the community on Twitter or something. I was like, who should we do? And I got a bunch of great answers. Grevin was a card that came out of this. And I think Carrick was also a well he went back to kind of get that in there. This card is obviously incredibly strong. He's playing a lot of CDH, but that's part of the story of how we got to this this creature, I believe, showing up in here. Other facts. Originally, the text was a little bit different. It was something like all your black mana symbols are black Phyrexian, which like didn't quite work, I think. But so that's why we had to write it out here. Anyway, fun facts. Cool. So there you go with Carrick, son of Yagmoth. Thank you so much. Justin says Ola. Ola, right back at you again. Let's move on to MTESM. Mitsisem. You out there, Mitsisem? If so, holler in the chat. Let me know. All right. So we're going to talk about Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Let's talk about Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Okay. So, I have a... oh, hey, I actually met you at Coral Sword, Justin. That's awesome. Really cool that you came back. Okay. Let's talk about Thalia. So, there's so many stories to talk about this card. I'm going to tell two stories that are both on the shorter side. You're going to get two stories for the price of one, which is free. But anyway, two stories out of this. The first story I'm going to tell is that White has a long and storied history of hate bears. And another card that it looks very similar to Thalia, wonder if how many of you know about this card, is a little card called Glow Rider. Look familiar at all? This is one more mana to lose first strike. Now, it's not legendary, admittedly, but this card exists all the way back from Legions. So when we were looking for new white hate bears to make, well, I think the team kind of thought that could be an interesting inspiration. Dark Ascension was a little before my time, so I don't know if that's exactly the case, but I have heard Glow Rider reference to it many times, so I think there's a decent chance that's true. But we always like these kind of cards around in a format, because usually if there's a really degenerate combo deck in Standard somewhere, it has to do with casting a bunch of non-creature spells. That's kind of how it gets done. So having some hate for non-creature spells around in a format is pretty important, and Thalia does a really good job of making that happen. The other quick story I'll tell is we changed the legend rule. Some of you might not know this if you started playing recently, but the legend rule used to be different. In the very beginning, the legend rule was just anybody could have one of them at a time. So if I played a Thalia, you couldn't have a Thalia too. If you played it, it died immediately, which was brutal with legendary lands, because if I played my Urborg first, you couldn't even play your Urborg, right? It would just play, or you could play, but it would die immediately, which is a total bummer. Then in Kamigawa, we changed the legend rule. So if you played a legendary card, they ate each other. So if I played an Umezawa's Jite and you played Umezawa's Jite, they canceled each other out and they both died, which by the way was really important because some people played Jite in their decks just to kill off opponents' Jites, right? It was one of the best ways to kill off that card. Okay, that's how it was for a very long time. Let's flash forward a little bit to working on Magic around the era of Return to Ravnica when I started coming to Wizards, or when I joined Wizards, and there was some talk around changing the Legend rule led by Billy Moreno, and Billy thought it was really frustrating how Legends had this downside to them, and we wanted to make more Legends. Could we peel this back a little bit further? And so this is one of the key cards we looked at, because one of the things that we tried was, what if we just removed the legendary rule entirely, and then people were starting to play like 3 Thalias, and it was really frustrating for non-creature spells. We decided that 1 on your side and 1 on their side was the limit. Mark Rosewater will continue to campaign, I think, for getting rid of the legendary rule entirely, but until that happens someday, we're sticking with the current legend rule. Changed a lot of times in history. Okay, that was a fun one. Thank you so much for the question about Thalia. From MTESM, whatever that stands for. I hope it's something good. Kithkin Guy, thank you for your question on Turn to Mist. We'll come back to that one at the end, because I know you already asked one. Let's go to the next question for someone who has not asked a question yet tonight, which is Kirby.exe. LaPointe Nick, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to follow. It really means a lot. It's only my second stream, so I'm still trying to grow everyone on here. And the fact that I've got 55 people hanging out on a Friday night and people are following is really cool. So thank you so much. I thought it might be a fun goal to see if I can get to Twitch affiliate in my first month of streaming, just to see if it works out. Okay, anyway, let's look at Possibility Storm. Let's talk about Possibility Storm. So there's a whole category of card I will call the red rare with a lot of rules text card. We have made so many of these. We have made, I can think of tons. I can think of Scrambleverse. I can think of a card that usually causes concessions in Commander, which is illicit auction, or thieves auction, where everyone, you set aside all cards, everyone takes turns grabbing them. This is like a death for webcam magic right here. Warp World, of course. Possibility Storm is another one in that era. And we still make cards like this that are kind of this like random chaotic red thing. But what we like about these cards is that they're often build-arounds, right? Warp World's a great example of a really cool build-around that actually saw a little bit of fringe play. And so with Possibility Storm, we made it and thought it could be a fun build-around. And someone might try building a wonky deck in Standard with it. And, it didn't show up a ton. There were a few decks here and there. But then everything changed eventually. Sometimes you lay a seed years earlier and it eventually blossoms. And Possibility Storm came to bloom with... Oops, that's not what I meant to do. But it's fine, so I'm going to search for a card anyway. Possibility Storm came to bloom with a mechanic I'm sure you're all familiar with, called Adventure. Because what happens is when all the adventures are creatures, the game sees them as creatures. But when you cast them for their adventure side, well, they're instants. So if you have a Possibility Storm in play and you stomp a Bone Crusher Giant, it's going to look through your deck for an instant. So if you have a deck that is Possibility Storms, all creatures with adventure, and one really strong instant, you can guarantee to always hit it. And so there is a combo deck in Pioneer, and I think probably Modern too by extension, that you can play, which Possibility Storm adventures into and Enter the Infinite, which you then win the game off of, which is pretty fun. So there's a fun story about Possibility Storm. I don't remember much about the exact design of it, other than it was just like, yep, this fills our quota for a crazy red rare. Let's do it. Thank you very much for that question, Kirby.exe, and I hope that you execute Kirby very well. I love that little guy. Moving right along to the Maverick Girl, Paige. Thank you so much for coming on in here. We're talking about Knight of the Reliquary, which is a card that I love a lot. What is there to say about Knight of the Reliquary? So this was before my time. In fact, I even played with this card a lot when I was playing professionally. It was a real powerhouse of a card. What I want to talk about on Knight of the Reliquary in particular, though, is the fact that you can search for any land. It's a huge piece of this card's power and functionality. A lot of cards that do things like this will only go find a basic land, or maybe it would go find a forest or a plains. This card finds any land, which is really good. Yeah. The Maverick Girl says in chat, the Maverick player asking about Knight of the Reliquary, who'd have guessed? Yeah, fair point. We're pretty careful about these kind of effects, especially with the advent of combos like Dark Depths, because now it's so easy to go just be like, well, I'm just going to always go search for a Dark Depths Thespian stage, you know? So whenever we make a card like this, or what's the card called? Is it Hour of Promise? Is that the green one? Probably not. Oh, it is. Hey, what do you know? When we make a card like Hour of Promise, where we have to be really careful because you can just go find your Thespian stage Dark Depths, which for everyone keeping track at home is an immediate kill, right? Which is actually part of why Hour of Promise makes them come into play tapped. So you can't, using 8 mana Thespian stage to kill them right away. You have to wait a turn to do it. But Nether Reliquary just puts it into play right untapped, which is very unusual and not a thing you see very often in Magic design. One thing about Nether Reliquary that really bums me out, bums me out is maybe the wrong word. It doesn't really bum me out, but it's just an interesting fact. Bums particularly Gavin out when he's designing commander decks for Wizards of the Coast, not my own decks, is that one thing we do in our precons is we don't put any tutors in there. And the reason, you might be like, what? Why no tutors? The reason for that is very simple. Imagine you buy it off the shelf, you sit down and play. Great, you're playing your precon. Then on turn 3, you play a tutor. Well, you have to go look at every single card in the deck because you don't know what they are, and you have to read a bunch of the new cards, and maybe you're new to the game, you don't know what any of these things do, and you have to choose one. So we just don't do tutors, basically, unless I search for basic lands, for the extent you would call that a tutor. I have to be extraordinarily narrow. So Nether Reliquary doesn't show up in our commander decks when they're green-white and have a lands matter theme of any kind, because it searches for any land, which of course in commander decks we've got a bunch of one-off lands, would be very complex, which is a bummer. But you know, there's still plenty of other times it can get reprinted. It's a totally sweet card. So that was a fun fact about Nether Reliquary. Thank you so much for that one. So a certain random guy I think my next card up here is Yargol, Glutton of Urborg, but if you could refresh that long list for me so I can get that up on my screen so I know exactly how many I'm contending with here, that would be rad. And in the meantime, let's talk about Yargol. All right, so we're going to look at Yargol here. Yargol is awesome. I love this card so much because to me, Yargol is living proof that you do not need powerful abilities to be a beloved Magic card. You do not need playable stats to be a beloved Magic card. All you need to be is a frog spirit who's legendary named Yargol. This is so perfect to me because, first of all, the name Yargol, literally on name alone, it is like a perfect card. It is just like, you hear the word Yargol and you're like, that's hilarious. I gotta know more about this. Holy smokes! So many requests. Okay. Oh, one of them was duplicated, it sounds like. Okay. Whew. For a second, I was like, do I have 4 pages of requests to get through? Okay. All right. Only a mere 3 pages, which is still a lot. Anyway, Yargol. And also, like, the unique power toughness does a lot here, too. So, this, I jest, but it really teaches us something about how we can make a card lovable and make it loved by players, even if it's not a great card. And a lot of players love Yargol and love referencing it. And Yargol even got its own secret lair, right? We recently did the Yargol Day secret lair on September 3rd, which of course, as we all know, is Yargol Day, which has, and let's see if I can find it here, the right version, which has Yargol in the artwork of a bunch of famous Magic cards. So it's a legacy that will live on. I hope we see Yargol when we go back someday to Dominaria. And I think it's just a really great, just a great one all the way around. A vanilla legend just being really adorable. I remember Dave Humphreys being like, Gavin, it wasn't even me, I think he was asking like Andrew Brown or somebody, like, hey, what do you think about 9-3? And Andrew's reply was, why 9-3? And and David's reply was, why not 9-3? How can you argue with that? How can you argue with why not 9-3? Am I right? Thank you for asking about Yargol. Okay. Looking over at the next card here, we are going to move right along to... all right, where are we at here? The next card is Nezahual. Thank you, Tower Slayer, for the follow. I really appreciate it. Moving on to the next card here, we've got Nezahual, Primal Tide. Okay, so this one's asked by Musharino. That's a great name. Oh, thank you, Musharino, for the question about Nezahual. Okay, so Nezahual heralds from a heritage of cards I will call the control breakers. And we always like making sure these are in a format. Because what happens there's a really interesting game design thing that happens. So let's say that control becomes the best deck in the format. Well, what we want to happen is for the metagame to move around and control not always being the best deck. So what we often make are these kind of pricey control breaker cards. The one that I always think about that's a classic is, that's very similar, in fact, to Nezahual in some ways, but worse, is a Pearl Lake Ancient from Khans of Tarkir, which is a 7-mana creature, comes into play at instant speed, can't be countered, that's key for the control lines, and then you can bring it back to your hand so it can't die. Not unlike Nezahual, except Nezahual, you discard 3 cards that flick out, but you draw a bunch of cards during the process. So why is this important? Well, one, we want to make sure that control decks have tools to beat each other and actually end the game, which is really important. We don't want people ending the game with Elixir of Immortality over and over. I talked about that last time. That's always a bummer. But also, and here's the fun little secret of it all, if we make decks that are good for control decks to beat other control decks with, but are not good against other decks in the metagame, then what happens is they start playing those cards, which makes them just a little bit weaker against the aggro and mid-range decks, which then give aggro and mid-range a chance to shine. So by making control breaker cards, it helps out there a lot. We actually do the same thing with aggro too. For example, there was, what's that 3-mana 3/2 protection from red creature in Mirrodin Besieged? Oh, I cannot remember the name, but there's a 3-mana 3/2 protection from red creature in Mirrodin Besieged. And the deal with that card is it's a card that you sideboard in mono red against mono red, so you're sideboarding them against each other, which means that your red decks get a little worse because you're wasting sideboard slots on this card. Volshock, something or other. Anyway, great question. Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to move on to the next card over here, which is going to be Nate Dog 2. Thank you. By the way, Nate Dog, thank you for everything you do in the community. You are a true rock star. You're amazing on Reddit. You're amazing on Twitter. I'm so glad you're here today. So thanks for everything you do, and happy to answer your question about Graceful Antelope. And thank you to Carrot Boy 4 in the chat, who says he likes my shirt. Yeah, this is from Coalesce Apparel. You can go check it out. They've got a whole line of shirts like this. So Coalesce Apparel, it's Cedric Phillips' company. So they're pretty cool. Volshock Refugee, Exidian, you nailed it in the chat. Thank you for Volshock Refugee. Okay, oh, it's from New Phyrexia. Well, there you go. Really, I guess it really started showing up in Mirrodin Besieged because of the Furnace Scamp came out in that set, right? And that really made mono red a little bit better. Of course, red was super screwed anyway because of Cawblade. But anyway, sorry for another time. Let's get on to Graceful Antelope. The problem is, I could talk about the obvious thing about this card, but I feel like that's the thing which Nate Dogg already knows, which is Planeswalk. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. So, Planeswalk is not a thing you see very much in Magic. It's very, 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 very rare. In fact, there's I think there's maybe there's fewer than 10 cards, certainly. Looks like there's one. Here are all your cards with Planeswalk. You've got Bogart Arsonist from Shadowmoor. In the history of almost 30 years of Magic, you've got Graceful Antelope. We've got Zodiac Rooster. Go Zodiac Rooster. We've got Righteous Avenger from Legends. And then we've got Old Fogey, right? Of course, if you count that, it's an unset. But then, who could forget Lord Magnus, which doesn't even have Planeswalk, but allows you to block Planeswalkers. And there's a whole history of these cards, which are so funny to me. There's Lord Magnus, who can block the 7 Planeswalking creatures in all of Magic, or 6, Planeswalking creatures in all of Magic, alongside Great Wall, who can help you block the 6 Planeswalking creatures in all of Magic. I mean, maybe there's Terrified of someone casting Aeson Highway. I don't know. But there's very, very few of them. Anyway, why don't we do more Planeswalk? It's kind of a grandfathered in thing, but ultimately it's because it doesn't really make sense. How do you sneakily walk on a plains, right? I get how you can walk through a forest. I get how you can walk through a swamp. I get how you can climb into a mountain. You can traverse an island. But if you're on a plains, you're just gonna be caught. You're just gonna be caught. And that's part of the reason why we don't make more Planeswalk cards. We don't do walk at all anymore, except for maybe in a commander set or master set or something. So, I mean, it's off the table. We stopped doing Planeswalk, by the way, or not Planeswalk, but Mountain Walk and Island Walk and so on. The reason why we stopped doing it is because it was really unfun and random, because you would sit down to play, someone would have an Island Walker in their deck, and you were playing blue, and you're just like, what gives? I'm just getting messed up because I chose to play blue today, and the fact that there's no interaction is a total bummer. Some interaction, cool, like protection. There's ways you can find around it, sacrifice effects, and so on. But with a walk, there's just no way around it, and especially in limited, it was pretty punishing. There are things that we liked about it, where it was like obvious you could sideboard these cards in against that color. But even then, protection cards were often better, and sideboarding in a Swamp Walker or a Mountain Walker, well, it'll just die to a bolt or something, right? So there you go. This, by the way. The fact that Planeswalk is so rare is why when I play Momir Basic on Magic Online, I always am using mostly Planes. You want, of course, some other things for activated abilities, but I tend to lean Planes because there's so few Planeswalk in there. Okay. Thank you for that great question, Nate Dogg. And once again, I really appreciate everything you do. Let's move on to the next person, who is Pika 201 with Hero of Precinct 1. Which cares about multicolored cards. Right, this is the one that gives you a token, yeah, when you cast the thing. Okay, so Glitchy Stitch, there's a list that a certain random guy is keeping. Feel free to drop that down, certain random guy. I'm gonna go, if you've already asked a question, I'll come back to you at the end. I promise I'll get through all the cards that are asked about today. It's just gonna take time, because obviously there's a bit of a queue here. So feel free to get your name on the list. Hang around, and it'll come your turn. Just keep the stream open in the background, even if you gotta run out for a little bit, or just listen enthralled the whole time, whatever it is you want to do. Last time the stream went on for about 3 hours, and we're only at an hour now. I don't know how long it's gonna go on for tonight, but we'll see. We'll kind of do it as long as I have the energy. It's very warm here in Seattle. It's like 80 degrees inside my apartment right now. So I'll see how long I can hold out, but I feel like we'll be good. If you want a card on the list, just say it. It's that easy. Just say it, and a certain random guy is keeping the list. And I assume it's a he. If, you can let me know your pronouns, a certain random guy, given that's your name. But you can drop it in the chat, and I'll put it on there. Okay, Hero of Precinct 1. Okay, so this is a multicolored matters card. We don't do a ton of this, but we like doing some. The thing is, it's fun to give you little cookies for like rewarding you for playing multicolored matters. And it's cool to make some cards like this. And it's one of the problems, though, is that when you do multicolored matters, you kind of incentivize building a soupy 5-color deck with a lot of multicolored cards. And historically, that's not always the most awesome thing to have around, because it just means that there's some deck that's trying to play all 5 colors of mana. It's getting huge payoffs for doing it. And then, it's playing the most powerful cards. And if that's the best deck, everything just turns to soup. And it's like, it's like when the deck called Quicken Toast from back in the day, that used all the Vivilands and Reflecting Pool, just played all the best cards, right? And they would cast Cryptic Command one turn and Cloud Thresher the next turn, right? Which is a blue spell and a quad green spell the next turn. It was a fun deck to exist for a little while, but it's kind of bad from a game balance standpoint. So how do we curb that? Well, one way is to make them focused on things like Commander, where it makes a lot more sense, and the games will go longer, so you don't have to worry about that kind of homogenization of Standard problem. But another thing you can do is create ones that are really good in aggro and mid-range strategies, because in those strategies, you're not going to really be able to play an effective 5-color deck, at least in Standard, because your mana for your aggro deck in 5 colors is not going to work out. So Hero Precinct 1 is an attempt. One of the things it's doing is it is an attempt at making a card you would play in an aggressive or mid-range deck that would make you want to play some multicolored spells. And I think this one hit perfectly, right? It got played in like some Esper decks, even some Esper control decks, some Esper mid-range decks, where you would play it, make some tokens, and you could go wide with it, which I thought was really cool. Ooh, Stalking Tiger from Balmon. I'm excited about when I get there. That'll be a fun one. I have a story about that card. So anyway, there's a bit for you about Hero of Precinct 1. Thank you so much, Pika 201. Moving on, let's go to Robot Rad. Hey, Robot Rad. Super cool. Oh, Pika 201 is asking if I can talk about how if Hero of Precinct 1 influence the designs of Worthy Knights, which is this card, and Clarion Spirit. Right, so the deal here is they're all 2-mana cards that say when you do the thing, make 1/1 flyer. Did they influence them? Well, here's what I can say. I can say that often when we find a card that works well, or the right stat line for a card, we are happy to do it multiple times in different versions, right? I mean, the number of times you've seen 1 and a red, or deal 2 damage, upgrade to 3 damage is tremendous, right? Or, you know, variants on shock, right? R deal 2 damage, upgrade deal 3 or 4 damage or something. Because when we find the right rates, it's just what we like to go with. And so Hero Precinct 1 worked out pretty well. I don't know exactly how Worthy Knight and this card, Clarion Spirit, came about, but I would imagine, you know, it was like, hey, what's a card that works as a stat line for this? 2 mana 2/2 is great, comes down early, give you a little cookie for doing the thing we want you to do, and a 1/1 token often fits. Because often what aggressive decks want to do is go wide, and like the Night deck, for example, wants to be able to go wide with creatures, and so it made a lot of sense to make those. I don't know if Hero directly influenced this. I would say it is unlikely to influence Worthy Knight, because Eldraine, I think, was pretty much done by the time, well, maybe not quite, but it was getting pretty close to done by the time that Ravnica Allegiance came out and people were playing with this card. So yeah, there might have been some influence there. But yeah, usually if we find a stat line that works, we just keep going back to that well, because we know it's going to work out well. Hopefully that helps answer your question. And thank you so much, Pika201, for your question there. All right. Moving on next. Let's see. Now we're going to Robot Rad. Good to see you here, Robot Rad. Thank you. Who's asking about Unesh, Cryo Sphinx Sovereign. So let's pull this up. This is a bit of a funny card to me, because Unesh is a Sphinx Lord. But one of the things we knew when we were making Unesh is that it couldn't just be a Sphinx Lord, because a 6 mana Sphinx Lord, like, there aren't enough Sphinges in Magic really to make it work. So if it only triggered off of other Sphinxes or did things to other Sphinxes, it would probably not be enough to hit the mark. So we wanted to give it something that would do right away. And that's why it also triggers when it enters the battlefield to reveal your top 4 cards and do the like mini Fact or Fiction thing. The ability here is very much inspired by Fact or Fiction. In fact, I think it was even originally 5 cards that you split into 2 different piles. Why is it casting Fact or Fiction? Well, because Sphinges ask riddles, and Fact or Fiction is a very riddly card. I think if you wanted to do the most riddle-like card, you would do Fortune's Favor, which, if you aren't familiar, is this card where it's Fact or Fiction with a face-up pile and a face-down pile, which is pretty fun. Fun fact about Fortune's Favor, by the way, this card came out of a game Ken Nagel played with his wife, where Ken Nagel cast Fact or Fiction, and his wife thought that she had to make 1 face-up and 1 face-down pile. Ken saw that, corrected her, but then was like, huh, that's an interesting Magic card. And he came back into the office and made Fortune Favor in Eldritch Moon, which was Ken's set. So yeah, there's a little bit of Unesh for you. Otherwise, it's cool to have a legendary Sphinx out there. I think if we ever do another one, it'll probably be blue-white, because there's a decent number of blue-white Sphinxes. Plus, you can play Sphinx's Revelation then in your commander deck. But yeah, that's a story about Unesh. Thank you so much, Robot Rad. Much appreciated. Let's go on to Morginian with Adorned Pouncer. Rar. Let's see. What is there to say? I'm not, okay, you know, when you telling me about a card, the things I might tell you could be anything, right? You never really know what roller coaster ride you're going to get on when you ask me about a Magic card. And with Adorned Pouncer, I think I'm going to tell you about a part of it that is a little atypical. I'm going to talk to you about the Eternalized part of Adorned Pouncer. So, one thing we are often careful to do with our mechanics is give them names that could go somewhere else, because it's really nice when we can use a mechanic later on in a place where it makes sense. For example, being able to use flashback everywhere or cycling everywhere, right? Something that makes a lot of sense to put in different places. Eternalized, though, was so keyed in to what was going on in Hour of Devastation that we wanted to give it we wanted to really give it its own name, and it's, you know, make sure the token was a 4/4 zombie. It was a copy of it, and make all the tokens look eternalized. And in fact, you know, here's the eternalized token right here. So we decided to give it this very proper noun thing, or very proper name thing. Interestingly, this has already hamstrung me as there's been sets I've worked on where I'm like, oh, we could do Eternalize again, that could be fun. And it's like, oh, right, the flavor makes no sense, right? There are no Nicol Bolas Eternalize zombies in this set. So, that's kind of a bummer about it. Other than that, one of the things that we often like to do in the block model was evolve mechanics. So we wanted to show how Nicol Bolas would take something and kind of corrupt it a little bit. The deal with Adorn Pouncer, what I was just to finish up, is we liked evolving mechanics. So we had Embalm in the first set, which created zombie tokens of things. And then we decided in the second set that Nicol Bolas would twist it and make Eternalize. And that kind of showed that Nicol Bolas was up to no good. So that's what happened there. Okay, let me tell you about True Name Nemesis, because I feel like this is a really interesting story. Thank you so much for the question about Adorn Pouncer Morginian. Much appreciated. And thank you to everyone who's following. I keep seeing my little follower notification go off. It really means a lot. This is only my second stream ever, so really means a lot to me that you are all following and growing me up. And to get a raid like this is truly incredible. So thank you all. I super appreciate it. And maybe I'll do more like this. We'll have to find out. So, True Name Nemesis. Let me tell you the story of True Name Nemesis. So, Billy Moreno was the lead of Commander 2013 the first time True Name Nemesis came out. And he was looking for really unique things to do. And so the idea with True Name Nemesis is it would be a politics card. And where you would basically pick a player and they could keep attacking that player, right? But you'd have to recruit the other players to deal with it. And it was like, oh, hey, I've chosen Jim as my nemesis. Now I'm going to keep attacking Jim, and no one else wants to kill off my True Name Nemesis. But, maybe Jim makes a deal with somebody and is like, oh, hey, will you call off a True Name Nemesis and I'll target you with a draw spell or something like that. Jim, I know I need to target you with True Name Nemesis, man. So it was a very innocent little card. Very innocent little card. Now, there were a number of suggestions, and there are some people who were like, Billy, maybe we should look at changing this card. One of the suggestions that I really liked for it, by the way, which would have radically changed how it played, is you chose one player to be your anti-nemesis, I guess. So it's like I would pick Jim, and I would have protection from everybody but Jim. So then it's like me and Jim, Jim is the only person who can kill a True Name Nemesis. Maybe he wants to keep it alive, but I'm able to attack the other players. So that was one idea that was pitched, but Billy didn't go with it ultimately. And there were a bunch of other changes pretty late to Commander 2013. A number of other cards had to change late because there were concerns about their legacy implications. So True Name Nemesis stuck all the way through, and it showed up a little bit, I would say. It's unfortunate because this was a good intentioned commander card that turned out to be very frustrating in Legacy. This card I do not find very fun at all in one-on-one Magic because you play it, it has protection from your opponent, you can't do anything. That's the whole joke. So that's pretty rough. Why blue over white? That's the question Jim Davis is asking, is why blue over white? I think if we were making this card today, we would make it white. I think it's that simple. In fact, I designed this, what was this card called? Lava something from, I searched for lava is probably not going to help me. I designed this card in, I can't remember the name, in Nicoria, where you choose even or odd, and you gain protection from whichever one it is. I don't remember the name of the card off the top of my head, but we've decided that's kind of a white thing to do now. If we're making this today, I think it would absolutely be white. It makes a ton of sense as a white card. Lava Brink Venturer. There you go. Thank you very much, Jim. I don't even know the name of my own card. I think if we were making this today, we would 100% make it white. I think that's just what it would do. At the time, blue was a weird protection color. So, right, if it was a kind of weird, different protection, blue got it. That was kind of its gimmick. So I think when Billy was looking, he's like, oh, it makes a lot of sense to put this in blue because blue gives all these weird protections. But in retrospect, it could have been a white card. And now we're doing a lot to try and give white more tools. So I think this totally could be white in the future. So great question, Jim. That's a bit of the history on True Name Nemesis for you. I don't have a different answer other than it was 8 years ago, and blame Billy Moreno, I guess. No, Billy's great. I love Billy. I hope he's doing well. Hope he's doing well now. Great, that was awesome. True Name Nemesis. Fun question from Jim, and thank you again so much for the raid. And now I've got a lot of cards to get through, so without further ado, let's keep on going to C. Diego FC. Thanks for coming back, C. Diego. I think you were on my last stream. We're going to talk today about Zada, Hedron Grinder, which is a card that is one of my favorites. Super blast of a card, really fun to play in Commander, really fun to brew up weird standard decks around when it was there. Let's see. Jim says he appreciates it, always has support with it in blue. Yeah. I mean, you know, part of the thing was, I think Billy was also looking for fun political cards in Commander that could be blue. The problem was it was just so blind to the fact that it could have gotten played in Legacy. One thing, not to go back off Zada, holding on one more second, but one thing that we've decided to kind of with our Commander cards is when it comes to Commander cards that could be Legacy playable, we don't try to do too much of them, but we have decided that if we're going to do them, we want to make them more reactive as opposed to proactive, because reactive cards are generally okay. The Flusterstorms turn out fine. The Scavenging Oozes, I mean, it's kind of a threat, but it's also kind of an answer, turns out fine. But the threats are almost always the problem. So True Name Nemesis was a threat that was a problem. And we try not to make legacy playable threats in our Commander decks anymore. Oh, hey, Jonathan Music. Funny, we did Arnie Brokenbrow earlier. Hey, and we were talking about your song. So everyone, Jonathan, who does the Arnie Brokenbrow song is here in the chat. And feel free to shower him with praise. I was telling them about all your Commander decks earlier. So super great guy. And thank you, Jim, for the compliments on the stream. I hope to do more of these too. This is my second one, and it's been a blast so far. Okay, so let's talk about Zada, who is a really big blast of a card. What's going on here? Well, one of a very popular casual social card back in the day was Radiate. And if you don't know this card, it's a little not quite as played now, but it's this which we talk about instant or sorcery spell, and it targets everything. Super cool. And then recently we made this card in no, it's not Radiant Lightning. Radiant Fire Dancer, I think is the name. I'm so bad with names of new Magic cards because I only know them. Yeah, Radiant Performer. Here we go. I only know them from the playtest names. So this is Radiance on a 2/2 body. Really fun. Well, Zada was kind of deciding to take that and go whole hog with it on a legend. So you could target Zada and hit all of your stuff. I remember we were playtesting some decks with this, and let's see, we're playtesting some decks with this, and it was a really fun standard build around because you could just kill people really fast with it. Sometimes, but it was a total glass cannon where it didn't work most of the time. And then Yanni Skalnick, who loved this card in particular, built, when we were playtesting Brawl for the first time, the first deck he ever built internally was a Zada deck that was really good about killing one person exactly, but really bad about killing more people. Anyway, this card is just a total blast, and I'm really glad that we made it, and it's inspired other cards too. This is also, isn't this like one of the Nephilim? Is it Witchmaw? No, I can never get this right. I can never remember which one is which. It's Ink Shredder, right? So it was also based off of Ink Shredder Nephilim. We get questions a lot about these being legendary. In fact, I made a Good Morning Magic episode about this this week, and this was an attempt to bring this to be not a 4-color card, but a monocolor legend too. Jonathan Music points out in chat that we played a game with a Zada werewolf deck. Yeah, it was totally wild, where he totally went off with Zada, right? He was he got a huge board, was playing cantrips, draw a bunch of cards. He played, I don't remember the name, it's from Zendikar Rising, where you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, draw a card, and play an extra land. And I think he got like 12 copies of this card. So he could draw 12 cards, Scale the Heights, there we go, where he could draw 12 cards, play 12 lands, and give 12 +1 counters. Yeah, I lost that game. I will say I've got a good record against Jonathan, but that is one where he destroyed 28. That's what it was. Scale the Heights for 28. Super fun. If you have not tried this card in Commander, it is a real blast. Good times. Really happy with this card. I don't have a ton of stories other than ones I told, but really happy with this card existing. We're going to talk about Time Elemental from the T-Ax, okay? So Time Elemental, first of all, I'm going to say, is way before my pun slightly intended. time. No, you are great distracting me. I'm here to talk with people, right? So it's all good. Time Elemental. Okay. Time Elemental is from Legends, which is way before my time. It's from 1994. I was 4 years old. So yeah, wasn't playing Magic quite yet. Only a few years later, started playing when I was 10. My favorite fun fact about Time Elemental, though, that many of you might not know, is the misprint. There's a really famous misprint which has Time Elemental on Serra Angel, and I wonder if I can find it here. I'm using Scryfall. I don't know if it's in here, and I kind of like don't want to run a Google search for it. But if you go and Google for it right now, you can find the Serra Angel with Time Elemental artwork, and so it looks kind of like a Time Elemental Serra Angel. Was a misprint that was widespread in one set. It was just a mistake, and it's a collector's item. So pretty cool. Once again, you can go and search for that on your own. As far as the design of this card, one thing that we don't really do anymore is create cards that can repeatedly bounce lands, because what you can do with Time Elemental is you can get it down and then you can just pay 4 mana and just keep bouncing things over and over, which means that your opponent will never get lands, which is a total bummer. Okay, it says F-Jork says on Scryfall it's here if I go look for it. So give me a second to go through versions of Serra Angel so I can show you what I'm talking about with the misprint. All right, hold on just a second. Oh, here it is. Check this out. Angel de Serra with a Time Elemental artwork. Blue border, white mana symbols. This card, I'm sure, confused a lot of people. But also it was a different time, right? Who knows? Maybe that's what a Serra Angel looks like. Who is to say? So, that's a fun fact about Time Elemental. The other thing about Time Elemental, which I think is pretty funny, is... let me get back to Time Elemental here. Is just the thing of like, if it attacks or blocks, you take 5 damage. It's just like, no, don't do it. Don't block with your 0/2. But definitely whatever you do, don't you dare for a moment attack with it. Don't you attack with that Time Elemental, it'll take 5 damage. You could, you could like, the funny part is you could like maybe Nettling Imp this or something to force it to attack, except it could just tap to use its ability to ignore that. So like, it's kind of a funny line of text to me. Anyway. Good stuff. Thank you for the question about the Time Elemental, the TX. Much appreciated. And thank you to all 250 of you hanging out there. I really appreciate it, especially everyone who came off of Jim Davis's raid. I'm telling stories about Magic cards. I've got a lot to get through. I super appreciate all the follows you all have been giving. I'm new to streaming, so this is a lot of fun. And what I'm doing is, if you tell me a Magic card, I will tell you a story about it eventually. So it's only a matter of time. Okay, let's talk about, thank you, Dan Dittersdorf, for the follow. That's awesome, thank you. Okay, let's talk about Tajik, from Shivam, of course, asking me about Tajik. Who else could it possibly be? Shivam is asking, says I could do either version of Tajik. I don't know, do we want to do Blade of the Legion, or do we want to do Legion's Edge? It's a hard choice. I guess I'll do Legion's Edge, because it's more recent. So Tajik is, of course, one of Shivam's favorite cards, if you're not familiar. Shivam loves Boros. I'm always making new Boros cards for him. And so what's going on here? Okay, so we knew we wanted to do a new Tajik when we were making Guilds of Ravnica. And early on in the Guilds of Ravnica design, I was actually leading the set. So we knew we wanted to do new Tajik. We knew we wanted a red-white legend. And so it's just a matter of what it was going to do. And we knew, of course, it was going to have Mentor from the very beginning because that was the mechanic for this set. And while actually a lot changed, thank you so much, the Angry Red Bird. Sounds like you got to go. Thank you so much for coming out and hanging out. Really appreciate it, and it's great to see you again. So Mentor is actually one of the mechanics in Guilds of Ravnica that did not change very much at all during the design process. It actually stayed, I think, pretty much as it was handed off originally. The other ones did. The red-blue mechanic and of Jumpstart and the green-black mechanic, and the blue-black mechanic of Surveil changed a lot. But anyway, I digress. Let's see. So where are we going with this? Right. So we knew it was going to have Mentor. So it's just a matter of what it was going to do. we tried a lot of versions of this. Haste we hit pretty early on because we thought it'd be fun to have a haste mentor creature. And then it was just a matter of figuring out what its other abilities were. Originally it had haste and first strike natively, and we gave it the activated first strike, I think as a slight nerf to the card. But the thing I want to hone in the most on is this non-combat damage thing. And where did that come from? Well, what we noticed is when we were looking at the whole set, red-white has some cards that deal damage to everything. For example, in the very same set, a card which kind of inspired us here, I think it's called Deafening Clarion, yeah, is this card, Deafening Clarion, which was a marquee card in red-white that dealt 3 damage to everything and gave all your creatures lifelink. Now, how could we get you to play Deafening Clarion alongside Tajik, right? They're totally different cards. Well, there is a little trick we could pull off, and it was this. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. One other reason why it has that line of text is otherwise, if you eliminated that, it would just be a mono-red card. Haste, Mentor, First Strike, those are all things red can get. But red can't prevent non-combat damage. So that's the bit of a white seeping in here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's some fun facts about Tajik for you, Shivam. Keep on Borosing on, and I'll keep making fun stuff for you. We've got some cool Boros stuff in the wings. I think you'll like some of the stuff in the future. So hope you enjoy, and thanks for coming and joining the stream. I really appreciate having you here, and everyone else on the CAG. Ellie being here is super cool too. What a great bunch of folks. Okay, let's talk about our next card, which is from Negative Skew, and that's going to be Tymna the Weaver. Okay, so Tymna the Weaver, what is going on here? So this is a partner from the original Commander 2016 set of partners. Tymna is very strong. It's a top level C EDH commander. Thank you very much for coming, Shivam. I really appreciate it. And, I'm always happy to come on. For those who don't know, Shivam has a great podcast called Casual Magic. Go give it a listen. It's a fantastic show. So, Tymna the Weaver, all the original partners, Commander 2016, what's going on? Well, we're making Commander 2016, and we wanted to solve the 4-color commander problem. Because we knew we were going to do 4-color commander decks. That was going to be the hook this time around. But as it turned out, making 4-color commanders was like really, really, really difficult. Because figuring out what 4 colors could do was like, all the cards looked kind of similar and like mishmashy, and it was tough to figure out. So they came up with the partner mechanic. And you could have 2 2-colored partners, play them together, and end up with 4 colors. It was a good solve at the time, and I'm glad they came up with the partner mechanic. But ultimately, I think one of the biggest problems first of all, partners is incredibly powerful because it means you start every game with another card in your hand, right? Now, instead of starting with 7 cards in your commander, you start with 7 cards in 2 commanders. But the other thing about this is that partner just means you get to play with more colors in your decks. So with the original partners, them being 2 colors, was incredibly powerful because not only do you get this extra card, but you get to play a 4-color deck. And the more colors you get to play in Commander, generally the more powerful cards you have access to. So while it was a noble solve for the occasion, I think that 2-colored partners were kind of a mistake because, like, let's take, thinking about Tymna or thinking about Thrasios, it's like, hey, you're going to play blue-green, and you're going to get this amazing 2-mana commander, right? I'll bring up Thrasios here. And those 2 things together, like, any one of those would be great, but the fact you get to add blue-green into a deck, which are arguably maybe the 2 best colors in Commander, and you get this amazing 2-color commander to go along with it, like, you shouldn't be able to play that as a bonus, right? You shouldn't just be able to go up to 4 colors to get all the best cards, all the blue-green fixing you want. And so on. So when we were making Commander Legends, there was a lot of dubiousness from the audience around if we could do partner again successfully. And when we announced it, there was a lot of concern, and I think those have gone over pretty well, and I think the big secret is that they were monocolored partners. The monocolored partners mean that you're only playing 2 colors max, which is actually, like, on average to most Commander decks are actually fewer colors than a 3-color Commander deck. Which really helped make them shine and allowed them to be a lot more fair. So yeah, that's kind of the partner mechanic in a nutshell and how I feel about it. I think we could totally do it again, but I think 2-color partners are pretty unlikely. But I think monocolor partners are really where it's at. And it of course gets hard because they're exponential. Every partner goes with every other partner, and there's now over like 1,500 possible combinations you can build. And that's not an exaggeration. We actually did the math. It's pretty nuts. So anyway, there's a lot on Tymna there. Thank you so much for the question, Negative Skew. If you're still out there, I really appreciate it. No, a certain random guy not doing 3-color partners. That's even wilder. We've gone too far. I guess theoretically you could do 5-color partners because then you're not adding any colors, so you can balance it appropriately. But I don't know why we would do 5-color partner. That seems, unless it's like a 2-mana 1/1 or something like that. Anyway. All right. Thank you so much, Negative Skew, if you're still out there. Oh, thank you so much for replying, and thanks for watching. Let's go to Krogbone Crusher with Triumph of the Hordes. Here's a card for you. Ooh, Triumph of the Hordes. Yeah, let's talk about this. Okay, so Triumph of the Hordes is from New Phyrexia. Uses Infect, of course, which is a hotly contested mechanic. Now, the thing about New Phyrexia is... New Phyrexia actually, it doesn't, it depends on who you ask, but it basically predates Commander for most people, because Commander 2011 came out after New Phyrexia came out, and that's when a lot of people really started seeing Commander for the first time. So the idea of giving all your stuff Infect was like, oh, you could do this in Standard, and it was kind of like Overrun equivalent and limited for that deck. But it's gone on to, of course, be a Commander powerhouse, to the point where a lot of folks really do not enjoy playing against this card. Infect itself being a very contentious issue in Commander, because you only need 10 poison counters, even though the life total has been raised to 40. Let's see. This is a card that we typically would not put in our... we would not put this kind of card in our precons, because it is so... frustrating for a lot of folks to play against. They really don't like this card. As to would we make more cards like this? I think now with Commander being so big, I just don't think we would, because it's so easy to kill people in Commander using a card like this. Right? Just dealing 10 damage to someone, killing them is such a big bummer. But yeah, it was designed as the Overrun. It worked fine for Limited. It was a powerhouse there, and now it lives on in Commander. I guess one fun thing I'll say about this is I put it in Mystery Booster. So I was trying to figure out where this card was going to get reprinted, because they're quite hard to come by, right? It's only in New Phyrexia, which was a long time ago now. And we're not going to put it in a Commander deck, right? We said we didn't really want to do that. So where is this thing going to live? And, if we even were ever someday to do another set with Infect, this card might not even go there. So Mystery Booster seemed like the perfect place for it. So I was so glad I got to get it in that set. One more fun fact for you. Who out there knows where this version is from? And if you know this set, I am very impressed. Very impressed if you know this set. Not many people do. See if anyone in the chat can get this correct. But this is a very special, very unique set. This is from the Phyrexians versus the Mirren dual decks. There it is in chat. A certain random guy got there first. Yellow Pie got it next. Really fun fact about you. So this was a contest the Wizards of the Coast ran to release an online duel deck. And they took deck lists from the community and published them on Magic Online. So basically one deck one for Mirren and Pure, one deck one for New Phyrexia, and then they put the dual decks on Magic Online and sold it as a product there. Here's the really fun fact about this, okay? So there was one Mirren winner and one Phyrexian winner. Before I came to work for Wizards, I submitted for the contest, and I won the Mirren side of the contest. So my first published Magic product actually predates me joining Wizards. It's the dual decks, which is pretty funny. So that's a little Gavin trivia for you, because I didn't go to work to Wizards for nearly a year later. And when I won the contest, it was amazing. I couldn't believe I won, and I got sent like a box full of like a full foil set of Mirren and Besiege and a booster box and all this stuff. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It's a fun little, like I said, fun little trivia fact for you. All right. Here's another fun story about that, which is years later, my coworker Dave Guskin left Wizards of the Coast, And Dave was one of my mentors at Wizards, and I really appreciated him a lot. And when he left, he gave me a deck box, and I was like, "What's in here, Dave?" And I opened it up, and they were the original playtest decks for what was called at the time, I think, Ham and Eggs or something, which would go on to be code names later. But anyway, he handed me the 2 decks that they used to playtest for these. So I had those in my closet as like the very first thing that I ever worked on before I even got to Wizards, which I think is very cool. Great question, Crogbone Crusher. I spent a long time on that one, but I thought it was a fun story. We're gonna move on to Ray Becker 320, who's asking about Thing in the Ice. By the way, Ray Becker, thank you for hanging out in the stream. You've been here since I think basically early on in the stream, and you said that you learned about that fun fact on Good Morning Magic. But you're totally right. I did an episode where I showed that off maybe like over a year ago as one of the unique things that I had in my closet. So thanks for mentioning that. Okay, onto your card. Thing in the Ice. Let's see. What am I going to say about this card? So many things in the ice. I don't know if I could really go for some ice right now, given the temperature. So one of the things we tried to do in Shadows over Innistrad was play into like some eldritchy horror tropes, but also just we're looking for different horror tropes to use. And the creature stuck in the ice was like such a resonant trope, such a thing in Magic to do that we wanted to tap into it. There's all kinds of stories like this. Literally, The Thing, right, is a classic story where they're at the North Pole and a creature invades, although not quite as big as this one. It's seen a lot of play. Something that I will say personally, I love this card for a lot of reasons. It's great, super awesome. Gets played in Eternal formats. Was awesome in Standard. I love that it's a creature that blocks and turns into a big creature. So much to love about this. I'll tell you one of the things that hurts my soul, although it's kind of a box we put ourselves in, which is this is a card that would go great. It would go so well in Commander precons because often it is it's an Instant Sorceries Matter card. We make a lot of Instant Sorceries Matter decks. It's an early defense card, and often we like make sure that our blue decks have ways to have early defense. And then it bounces all creatures to reset the board to clear out all the tokens and stuff. So on paper, it is like such a great Commander deck card. The bummer of it is we can't do double face cards in Commander because we want them to in Commander decks because we want the decks to be playable out of the box. And if you don't have sleeves, then you can't use it. Maybe someday that'll change. I've been talking about it some recently, given how many double face cards we've been doing recently. That someday we might need to allow for DFCs. But yeah, this is a card that would go great in Commander decks, but currently cannot go into Commander decks because it is a double face, which is a bit of a bummer. So there's a fun fact for you. Thank you so much to who was this? Was Ray Becker 320 for the question. Someone in the chat talked about Ashnod. I would love for Ashnod to have a card someday. I think that would be really cool. I tried to make one in Commander Legends and it didn't quite happen. It got cut. There's a video you can watch with a early playtest version of it over on my YouTube channel. So there you go. All right, let's talk about Gaming Chill Mill 1 with Manichi the Fevered Dream. Manichi the Fevered Dream. By the way, a certain random guy, can you just tell me about how many cards there are in the queue? And I might see if I need to. Cut it off here. We'll see. If it's like over 60, I should probably cut it. We're at about an hour 40 minutes right now. Yeah, checklist cards in the precon is certainly a possibility, but it's just kind of inelegant a little bit to give out checklist cards. Also, we'd probably have to lose a token if we did that, and you want to make sure to have many tokens as possible. Not impossible, but the other thing is, so let's imagine you sit down and shuffle and play. If you've never seen a double-sided card before, or you don't know they're in there, you could be halfway through your game before you fully notice it. Because when you're shuffling 100 cards, you don't always notice the like weird upside-down card in there. Anyway, all right, let's go to Manichi the Fever Dream. So in Returns of Kamigawa, there's this effect, which is on here, but there's also another effect, I think it's in the same set, that is kind of reference to this card, and it is called... It costs 2 red mana. What is it called? I'm going to run a little search here. if I can pull it up. Is it here? Oh, maybe it's not Betrayers. Maybe it's in Savers of Kamigawa. No, it's not there either. I know I'm not making this up. Right? Is it in the first set? Oh, here it is. First set. Strange Inversion. Ta-da! I beat the chat too, and no one else in the chat knew this card. So this was Enchantments of Kamigawa, which is an effect we do very, very rarely. And then immediately the set afterwards, someone's like, yeah, let's run that effect back and do it again, and switch creatures' power and toughness. Pretty fun. So that's one fun reference I wanted to call out. Manichi the Fever Dream. So we do not do this kind of power toughness switching thing very often. And the reason why is because it is extremely confusing and unintuitive how it works. Because let's say I switch power toughness, great. Then I cast a card that gives +0/+3 to my Manichi. Well, my Manichi doesn't get +0/+3, it gets +3/+0. And it gets even more wonkier when you're like flipping things multiple times in a turn, and it's just kind of confusing. There's a lot of weird things that can happen when you're switching power and toughnesses. So we don't do it very often because it's caused a lot of rules concerns. So not to say you won't ever see it again. I think there's fun stuff to be done here, but this is kind of probably one of its kind legend. So if you enjoy playing your Manichi the Fever Dream Commander deck, which hopefully you do because it's such an interesting card, I would not hold out to find a blue-red version of Manichi or something someday. Other than that, I don't have a ton of fun facts about this. Here's a fun fact. Every rare in Kamigawa is every permanent that's a rare in Kamigawa is legendary, which a lot of people probably don't know. So this is including the creatures, tons of legends in that set. So when you see the Fever Dream, one such example. That was true in Champions. I'm also pretty sure it's true in Betrayers as well. Okay, moving right along to the next card. Thank you so much for the question about Manichi the Fever Dream Gaming Chill Mill 1, if you're still out there. The Bomb is Me 123. It just rolls off the tongue. What a great name. Let's go to Kalia. And they say we can talk about either Kalia. I want to talk about Kalia Zenith Seeker, the newer one. Okay, Kalia. So when we were making these legends in Core Set 2020, Yanni Skolnick, the lead designer, had this really cool idea to do 3 enemy-colored legends. And it was partially because of Brawl. It would be nice to have 3 color legends available in Standard, so every color pair was represented, or every color trio was represented. But also just, for Commander, because it would be cool to have them in Standard. So we got a bunch of it. We got some other throwbacks. We got Omnath, for example. We got Kaikar, who was super cool. But one of the things that we went back to with Red, Black, White was, what if we redid a famous character? We redid Kalia. Now, one of the things about Kalia is we wanted to call back to the original, but cheating things into play we knew was going to be a problem, because the original Kalia was not Standard legal. This Kalia would be, and just cheating in demons, dragons, and angels is a big no-no, right? We don't want to just allow you to cheat that in for really cheap. So rather than reprint the old Kalia, we came up with a new one. And we want to make sure it still dealt with angels, dragons, and demons, which is why it has this design, but find you them instead of putting it into play. And one of the goals I think Yanni had, if I remember correctly from talking with him, is he wanted this to be a card that you would play in your Kalia deck. So maybe it wouldn't lead the deck. I think in a Commander game, most of the time Kalia is going to be better, the other Kalia. This is a card you would put into your Kalia deck in Commander and be a really, really ace card. Now, one thing that was brought up to me after the set released, which I thought was pretty funny, and is a really interesting design note, I think, that I've really kept in my head since then, is many people actually think this is better in some ways in Commander than the other Kalia. Now, why is that? Because the other Kalia is ridiculous, right? It's a 4-mana 2/2 flyer that cheats in your angels, demons, and dragons. Why is it that the one that just finds you the cards could be better than the other Kalia? And the answer is so interesting, so Commander-focused, which is, if you're playing the 4-mana Kalia, everyone's going to target you. That Kalia will never get to attack. Everyone knows, kill the Kalia right away. Where with 3-mana Kalia, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, you're playing a fine game. Go draw some angels, demons, and dragons, I guess. And then you get your card advantage. And over time, you kill your opponent, which is really fun. One other design note about this card is And this is something that everyone has different sensitivities to. I'm probably on the like higher end of the sensitivity spectrum for this, so I try to not make any of these. I generally dislike commanders that are only ETB effects, because the play pattern that tells you to do is play your commander, have it die as soon as possible, and then recast it again to get the ETB again. So usually when I design a legend with an ETB ability, I also put on some other ability that makes you want to keep it in play, so that you are you're incentivized to keep it around instead of sacrificing it and just casting it again. Now, of course, standard cards have different needs, and I know Yanni was probably hoping this would inspire some fun sideways standard decks too. So all good stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on with Kalia. Fun facts there. Yeah, you can blink this. That's true. That's a good point, Yadev in chat. Okay, moving along. Magma the Lionhearted wants to know about the Gust Cloak ability, aka what I call the take back ability. Let's see. So this is an ability that we saw on a bunch of cards in Onslaught block. It ran throughout the whole block in white, and it was this ability, but I actually going to pull up a different one because this one is not really as indicative of much, because that grants it to all your creatures. But here's a better example of when this creature becomes blocked, you're going to tap it and remove it from combat, which both lets you do like fake out attacks where you like attack with 4 creatures, they block them, you're like, okay, that just takes you backsies, I'm going to untap them, I guess. It does do some cool things like trigger when you attack triggers and stuff like that. But in general, the problem with this kind of card is it's not easy to understand. You look at this for a new player and you're just like, I don't get it. What does this mean? And maybe you or I know that what it means is it gets removed from combat and doesn't deal damage anymore and stops attacking. But it's not necessarily obvious that happens, and it's kind of just a super weird ability. Could we see it again? I think we could, right? But I think we would see it in like a Horizon set. I think we would see it in a like a commander product as a one of. I don't think we'd see this back as a full-on standard mechanic, because it is just so weird and so unintuitive to new players with how it works. But yeah, if you like it, I'd be curious what people in the chat think. You can feel free to let me know. But yeah, thank you for that question. I haven't thought about this Gust Cloak cycle in a moment, so that was nice. Moving right along here, we're gonna go to Pink Pie, who is asking about Common Bond. So this is I think this is the 3-mana combat trick, right? Yeah, this card for Common Bond. All right, so this is a card from Return to Ravnica, and it puts a counter on either 2 counters on one creature or on 2 different creatures. And this is actually a throwback card. Oh, I see some emotes in chat for Jim. Awesome. Thanks for sticking around, folks. This is actually a callback card, by the way, to a card many of you might not know. Who can guess it in the chat? It is this card from original Ravnica called Seeds of Strength, which gives a 3 creatures +1/+1, or 1 creature +2/+2, another +1/+1, or so on. This card was a total blowout, by the way. Being able to, for 2 mana, set things up however you want was really strong. So anyway, we made this card in Return to Ravnica, and it's kind of a callback to that, and to kind of do, green white lace going wide, so counters made a lot of sense. We wanted to have the gold cards be like nice cards to have. This was meant to be like a mid-level combat trick you could play. What we've learned though is this kind of thing is, I mean, I'm not gonna say we're not gonna do it anymore, but we're probably not gonna do it at common anymore, because it was really hard for people to parse, right? I think if you've been playing for a little while, you get it, but as one player told me, they said they read this and felt like they had a stroke. Like they're like, is it a misprint? I don't get it. Why does it say the same thing twice, right? So, this kind of thing is just like kind of nonsense. And so when we were working on Kaladesh, there's this card, it's something here it is, Invigorated Rampage. For a very long time, this card read, target creature gets +2/+0 and trample, target creature gets +2/+2/0 and trample, and we changed it for that reason. Because people were just like reading it and they're just like, I don't get it. This is wonky. So that's why this card changed. And I think we could do a similar effect to Common Bond, just with different templating. And as you beat me to it, by the way, F. Jork in the chat. Well done. You got in right before I did. But this is also in the same kind of cycle as Bounty of Might, which you might notice is from Guilds of Ravnica, which is the grown-up version of Seeds of Strength. So it's another reference in another Ravnica set. This one we're more okay with because at rare, right? The confusion thing is only a really big issue at common. At rare, it makes a lot more sense, and people will get what's going on here. And this was fun because you can get +9/+9 or +3/+3 3 times. So yeah, there's some fun facts for you about Common Bond. Thank you, Pink Pie. Next up, we're gonna go to Bamboo HP. You still out there, Bamboo HP? Just give a holler if you are. Here is Una, Queen of the Fae. I played this card in Standard back in the day. This was a nice card. Fairies was big. You would sideboard one of these and get your opponents. Good times. All right, let's talk about Una. Let's see. So for a long time, we made sets and then just for whatever reason didn't make legends that were like the namesake legends of those sets. Una is one that we finally did, which I was really happy about. And in fact, Lorwyn actually did a lot of this, which is really cool. Not to say the other sets didn't, but there were a lot of like legends you'd seen flavor text, like Wart and whoever, that we eventually saw. And if you're still out there, Kithkin guy, I know. We didn't make a Kithkin tribal legend, which maybe we'll do someday. You get Gaddock Tea, I guess, but so with Una, one of the things about it though is Una came in Shadowmoor, and I'll actually pull up the Shadowmoor version here to make it on theme and appropriate. The other ones tended to all come in the Lorwyn block. So if you don't know, by the way the block was structured was Lorwyn Morningtide, and then there was a shift to Shadowmoor Eventide, where it stopped being a tribal block and it started being about hybrid, basically. And the plot was that Una and the fairies knew this thing called the Great Aurora was coming, which I designed. I'll put it up on the chat. I designed this card years later. They knew the Great Aurora was coming, which would change things in the landscape forever. Okay, and so but the fairies knew about this, and so in Shadowmoor, all the other races changed colors. For example, let's see. What's the card called? Like the Kithkin. I don't know. We just have to search for Kithkin. The Kithkin were green-white, right? And then they changed to blue-white, like on Augury Adept here. They went from green-white to blue-white, and the Merfolk went from blue-white to blue-black, right? And you even see it here. So here's like the white-blue Sig River guide, and here's his corrupted Sig River Cutthroat version of it. So there you go. Una, and the fairy shifted too, by the way. Fairies moved into white-blue, but Una, because she was unchanged for whatever reason, she's like a magical being, all kinds of stuff, shifted, stayed blue-black in this set, which is a pretty interesting little note from Shadowmoor. Yeah, and we shifted a lot of characters, right? As CDO FC points out in chat, Aisling changed from red to black. Wart, right, the Bogart Anti, changed from, Wart has a bunch of things here, but this was the black-red goblins card, shifted to a red-green goblins card, right? So things kind of moved around a little bit. Okay, let's see. We're at about 2 hours, so anyone who hasn't given a card yet, who wants one on the list, say it now or forever hold your peace, I guess, until the next stream. And then we're going to close the list and make it final. So if you want a card on the list, you haven't given one yet, now's your chance. Otherwise, we're going to close it here in just a second. So a certain random guy, give it a moment for those to come in and then close it. And I'll move on to the next card, which is, it's by Kirby.exe. I've already done one of yours today, so we're going to put you at the bottom of the list. And I'll get to yours, but I want to get to the people who haven't gotten one yet. And we're going to go to Geo1771. You still out there, Geo? If so, thanks for sticking around. We're going to talk about Risen Reef and see what's going on here. So, Risen Reef, what a delightful Magic card. So, Yanni Skolnick, lead designer of M20, had the idea of doing a tribe. And the tribe that it worked out to doing was elementals. It made a lot of sense given that Omnath, who was going to be in the set, was red, green, blue. So he did elementals as a sub-theme. And so some things that made your elementals better were a sure bet. Risen Reef, how did this card come about? Well, I think, and I wasn't in the room when it was designed, but from what I heard, I'm pretty sure it's just, hey, everyone likes Coiling Oracle. let's just do Coiling Oracle, but on an elemental trigger. That sounds sweet, right? And that's one of those things where you're just like, hey, I've got an idea, and everyone looks at each other, and they're like, yeah, I don't know, sounds pretty good, let's do it. And so, once again, it wasn't in the room where it happened. I can't guarantee that's exactly what occurred, but based on what I've heard, I think that's probably true, because it's just so similar to Coiling Oracle. One note, though, it does put the land into play tapped, which is a pretty meaningful difference. It means that you can't combo out with it quite as easily. You can't just like keep playing it over and over. It also means that you can do your math properly. One of the problems with Coiling Oracle is, let's say you have 3 mana and 2 2-drops in your hand. Well, you're kind of like, well, I could take the risk and play the Oracle and hit a land to cast another 2-drop, but maybe I won't hit a land, so I can't do it. Well, this just fixes that problem for you of like, don't worry about it. It just comes into play tapped. You're going to know how much mana you have. We often like doing design decisions where you would know how much mana you're going to have, so you don't have to do like weird math that gets complicated. Okay, thank you for the question, Geo1771. Let's move on to Faded Overseer, who's asking about Gravecrawler. Let's talk about Gravecrawler. Great card. When I think about excellent designs of cards in Innistrad block, I mean, Innistrad was a masterpiece of a set. Make no mistake about it. But when I think about great cards in an original Innistrad block, Gravecrawler is a phenomenal design. It is very resonant. It is very understandable. And it got played in zombie decks, which is super cool. The thing I want to talk about specifically, though, to talk about the design of this card, is Gravecrawler can't block. Why is it that Gravecrawler can't block? Like, what's the harm there? Well, what we've found is with these recursive creatures that come from the graveyard onto the battlefield, we try to make sure that they can't block, because otherwise the best thing to do with them becomes recasting them and blocking every turn. So they come into play, they block, they trade, you just cast it over and over and over again. So usually we do one of a few fixes. Either they can't block, which is the simple way of doing it, or they enter the battlefield tapped. So when you recast them from the graveyard, they come in tapped, so they can't block right away. So you at least have to wait a turn on doing it. That's not the case every single time. There are exceptions, but in the modern day, that's normally what we do. Also, if you can cast it at instant speed, we usually have it come into play tapped, because we don't want you blocking out of your graveyard at instant speed. That's kind of like a surprise combat trick out of nowhere. But in general, I think this is just a brilliant Magic card, and I love the combo with like Goblin Bombardment and stuff like that. So love this. Love this card. Thank you so much, Faded Overseer. We're gonna move on to Torre de Commando. I hope you're still out there. I know you were asking a bunch of questions earlier. You had a question about Rebels. I'll get to at the end if you hang out. So let's go to Saskia. Okay, the queue is now officially closed, a certain random guy. So if there are anything up until this point, fair game, then we're gonna cut it. All right, let's go on to Saskia. Okay, so when the 4-color commander decks were being designed by Ethan and then later Ben, what they found, as I alluded to earlier, is that trying to figure out what all 4 colors were doing just made a mishmash. So these cards actually became defined by what they weren't doing. So what doesn't blue want to do? What is the non-blue deck doing? Which is actually in design how we refer to them: the non-blue deck, the non-red deck, and so on. And what blue likes to doing is like waiting and patience, and not necessarily hitting people right away. Saskia's like, nope, set all that aside. We're not only going to hit people, we're going to make enemies, we're not going to think ahead, and we're just going to hit people with twice the force as before. So that's kind of where the genesis of this design philosophy-wise came from. Otherwise, one thing we always look for in commander designs is, can we do something that only works in Commander, that really only makes sense in Commander? Because that gives us a design we wouldn't use somewhere else in a standard legal set, for example. And in the case of Saskia, it does a great job of that, right? In Standard, I mean, you can choose your opponent if this existed, I guess, to double up the damage on them. But it's really, like, for reading it, it's really meant for Commander, right? It's meant to be like, hey, I'm going to choose Jim, and I'm going to attack Kim, and they're both going to take damage from it, which is really cool. So yeah, I love this Hydra Omnivore style effect. I think it's really cool, and that's kind of the history of where Saskia came from. Thank you so much, Torre de Commando, and I'll do your other question at the end. Let's move on to Star Trek Mania, who's asking about Mindslaver. Okay, so Mindslaver. This card, I'm going to bring up the OG version. This, which is one of my favorite arts, by the way, here by Glenn Angus. I just love what this like kind of schematic look this implies. From original Mirrodin, I mean, this, no pun intended, blew everyone's minds when it came out. It is a truly just, I don't know, a truly wild magic card. I don't know what to say. Controlling someone's turn didn't exist before then, and the implications of this were huge. Of course, thank you so much, Morrigan, for coming around. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your question earlier, and hope to see you again sometime soon. Man, Mindslaver created so many rules issues. So many players who didn't understand how it meant. You can close the queue now. A certain random guy. You might have missed it when your internet dropped, but yeah, there were a lot of people who were like, "Can I concede for my opponent?" No, you can't concede for your opponent. A lot of weird things that could go on here. One thing I want to note that changed between the two. How many of you two know what changed in the rules text between the two versions, or on the text box? It's this bit right here. He or she doesn't lose life because of mana burn. Because by the time we got to Scars of Mirrodin, there was no mana burn. Nothing to worry about. That was the real biggest concern, right? You would take their turn and tap all their lands and mana burn them. One of my favorite things to do in all of Magic is to Mindslaver someone's combo deck and see if I can combo out for them, which is a pretty fun thing to do. The other thing I'll mention is I put it on the Mystery Booster foils, and I put it on the old version because I love the old art so much. That's really the only reason why I chose the old version to go on the foil sheet. I love the art, and I thought there'd be some fun stories if this was on the foil sheet, which is pretty fun. So I didn't make Mindslaver. Fun fact, though, I did make, and before you bring out your pitchforks, hold on just a second, I did make 13 mana Emrakul, the Promised End. And when I say I made this card, what I want to say is I came up with the take control of someone's player's turn, take control of a player's turn, and then they take another turn after it. That was my line of text. The rest was not me. I think I also came up with 13 mana, 13, 13. Unfortunately, in retrospect, this is my attempt to kind of like fix it. Like, oh, taking a turn might be okay because then they'll get another turn. Cool. In retrospect, this ended up still being really frustrating though. So I think what we've learned is extra turns are annoying and we should do it very, very, very rarely. It's also, we've decided like not that fun in Commander. So even though early on we made a card like Cruel Entertainment, which is a pretty LOL card. Like I think this card is really funny. I don't think we would make this kind of card in a Commander deck today because it's really hard to play and kind of frustrating. Also now with the advent of webcam magic, it's so hard to play this card. Okay, so the queue is officially closed, but there's still a ton of cards to get through. So we're gonna just keep on going here. Popper Bust, you still around here? Thank you again for Star Trek Mania for the question there. Popper Bust, you still around? You want to know about Stark of Wrath? Stark of Wrath. So definitely before my time on this card. I think this came out in Tempest, which is 97. I was 7 years old. I think I knew Magic existed at this point, but had not started even playing yet. One thing I will say, oh yeah, there's going to be cards here for a while, Ragnarok 14, so sit back, relax. If you want, leave it up in the background, whatever you want to do. One of the things about Stark of Wrath is, so I love these kind of political cards, the pass around the table cards, and I think they're super fun. Now, Stark does something that red doesn't really do in destroying creatures straight up. That's not really a red effect, but it does create chaos at the table, so you could maybe debate it. I would say this is probably not red today, though. Probably not. It would probably do something like destroy target artifact or deal a bunch of damage to a creature. It's weird, though, because it's also not black. It might even be a white card, frankly, at this point, right? You destroy something and then you give them control of this. But where this card's clearly always meant to be played is multiplayer Commander-style formats, because you can pass around the table and conspire with people. And this card in particular has inspired a lot of other cards in the future. It helped inspire cards like why am I blanking on the name right now? But it's the 1R 2/1 that you can tap to draw 2 cards and then give to somebody else. It even inspired cards as new as Bucknard's Everfull Purse, right, where you're passing things around the table. Humble Defector, thank you, Star Trek Mania. Like Bucknard's Everfull Purse. This kind of pass around the table thing is still big today. So it really helped inspire a whole legacy of cards. Yeah, that's a great point. You could put this as mono red commander, which is mono red controlling commander, which is really cool. You don't attack me or I'm going to blow your thing up, which is pretty fun. Plus, you can use cards like Brand to take this back, right? There's lots of fun ways to synergize with stealing your or giving your opponent your stuff and casting a card like Brand to get it right back. So lots of fun to be had there. No, Shivam, it does not bug me to have to make cards for Commander. I mean, making cards for Commander right now is my main job, so I like doing it. It's a good time. Alrighty. So let's see here. Moving right along, we're gonna go to let's see, Atori de Commando. You asked for pro player stories. I've got some good ones. I'll put them at the end though. Maybe we'll close out with story time toward the end. So kick that there. Sir Toasty T wants to know about Nicol Bolas the Ravager. All right, yeah, this is a fun one. It's got some stories to it. So here's what's going on with Nicol Bolas the Ravager. In core set, no, I should back up from there. Where should I start? At the beginning. In Innistrad, we came out with double-faced cards. Brand new. No one had ever seen this before. It was mind-blowing. Blew everyone's minds. Amazing. Then we started trying it out again. Like, could we do this more places? And in core set 2016, which is known as Magic Origins, we released the double-faced Planeswalkers, right? We released creatures that turn into Planeswalkers, like Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, which is quite a popular card. And these were creatures on the front side that turned into Planeswalkers on the back side. Why did we do this? Well, we did it because it let you play them in Commander. Planeswalkers are really popular, and people like them, but they can't be your commander in Commander. So the way to kind of cheat that, in a sense, is to make creatures that flipped into Planeswalkers. Additionally, it's a great way to help tell a story, right? You show Jace when he's young, and then boom, you show him when he's turned into his Planeswalker form. It really helped the Holding Night the Spark thing going on. So flash forward, we did 5 double-faced cards in that set, the 5 Planeswalkers. Flash forward to core set 2019, we wanted to do Nicol Bolas. We wanted to do a flip version of him because we thought it would be really cool to see him transform, because this was when his spark was being ignited. So doing the same trick we did as in core set 2016 made a lot of sense. Great, awesome, wonderful. But there's a weird thing where it would be the only double-faced card in the set. And so there was a lot of debate around if we could do this. Could we do just one double-faced card? Would people flip out about this? Would it be really annoying and frustrating? Did it even make sense? Was it worth the trouble? Because doing double-faced cards is like basically double-faced cards have to get printed on their own card sheet. That's just all that double-faced card. Was it worth doing? The answer, as it turns out, was yes, we could do it, and yes, it was right to do. Players really liked this, and when it showed up in draft, it was neat, and someone would it'd reveal it to the table that you open up Nicol Bolas, and it was just a cool design in general. Other than that, this just showed Nicol Bolas sparking. A question I get a lot is, was there ever an Ugin card like this in the set? And no, there was not an Ugin card in the set like this. That part came later. But someday, maybe we'll get an Ugin flip card. Who knows? This is also a fun fact. Nicol Bolas was the face of core set 2019. That was a repeat. He was also the face of core set 2013, which, as I mentioned earlier today, was the first card that was multicolored ever in a core set. So, fun fact there. Thank you for the question, Sir Toasty T. Let's move on to Atticus1059, who's asking about Urtai Wizard Adept. So, I'll bring this up here. Let's take a look at Urtai. All right, so this is the original Urtai. Yeah, I should say, so the list is currently pretty long, and I've also closed it. I've been going for about 2 hours. I'm going to go through the rest of this list. So, yes, next time, I know you asked about Estrid, which I have a great story about. I really want to tell it. Maybe at the end, if I'm feeling like at the end, maybe I'll tell the Estrid story. We'll see. Because I do have a really good story about Estrid. Yeah, maybe. We'll see what happens. Anyway, on to Urtai. Let's talk about Urtai. Showed up in Exodus, was a part of the Weatherlight crew, and was a huge part of flavor text. Like, he was the original witty blue mage, right? He kind of embodied the like, oh, you can't touch me, I'm so witty and clever, I'm, you know, kind of guy, which gone on to inspire a lot of flavor text. And in fact, at one point we had to have a meeting about like, hey, Jace is an Urtai. You can't just write Jace flavor text like it's Urtai flavor text, you know? Anyway, design-wise, though, this card is kind of miserable, and we would not make something like this today, because a repeated counterspell on a stick is just really frustrating to play against, right? You leave up 4 mana, you counter whatever they play. In one-on-one Magic, you can just lock somebody under this. It's kind of like the time elemental problem I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I don't think it would make this kind of card these days, but it is a great emblemation of what Urtai does. So that's kind of all I got on this card. It was from way before my time, and it's a pretty straightforward card, but I just don't think it would make a card like this these days. Counterspells that are on the board are pretty frustrating, and yeah. Eric in the chat says he wants to see a story with Jace and Urtai in the room. Yeah, one thing that we sometimes do when I don't do, but the creative team does, when they're trying to like figure out how the characters would interact, is they play the exercise of how would these two characters move a couch together, and it's really fun to play around in your head, right? Like, oh, how would Gideon and Liliana move a couch together? How would Sorin and Chandra move a couch together? Like, what dynamics come up? So fun little writing exercise for you there. Maybe you can go write some of your own stories. Thank you so much for that, Urtai, from Atticus. Let's move on to Judge Donald. Thank you, Judge Donald, who's asking about Trading Post. You still out there, Judge Donald? Hopefully yes. Let's talk about Trading Post. So I would say Trading Post is yeah, in the chat people are saying that Liliana would sit on the couch while Gideon moved it. If you said that, good answer, because I think that's also what creative answered, is Liliana would sit on the couch while Gideon moved it. Alternative answer was she would summon a bunch of zombies to move it for her. But then that doesn't involve Gideon, so you know. Anyway, have a good sleep, Blind Guardian 98. I'm not gonna ASMR you, but hopefully you can still fall asleep nonetheless. I could do an ASMR stream sometime though. Anyway, let's talk about Trading Post. That's the card on the screen. Trading Post. So this card has been inspirational for so many people, and for so many future designs. When in Standard, this card was very popular, right? People tried to make this card and this card work, and it kind of got. I mean, there was like fringy decks, right? I think like Saffron Olive had a fun Trading Post deck, and it never really hit. But a really emblematic thing to us as designers is we know a card is going to be popular, or a card is worth making more of, rather, if people like playing it even when it's bad, right? If a card is bad and or a card isn't good enough to get played in Standard, people are still playing that deck anyway, then you know it's probably worth making more of them. So we made Trading Post, which was an awesome card. Everyone loved it. Still gets played in Commander. Super cool. And then Trading Post inspired me to make this card, Retrofitter Foundry. Because I was like, oh, it'd be super fun to have like a Trading Post style card, and it's a Healy deck in Commander. So I made this. And then years later, there was recently in Strixhaven, Corey Bowen made this card, Thane the Broker, which was inspired by Trading Post. So often if there's a card that is beloved, and people play it even though it's not good, that means we should make more of it, and especially target it towards Commander, which is where it sits the best. So Thane, Retrofitter Foundry, these all owe their lives to Trading Post, which is just a delightful kind of cycle through it style card. Mango TCG says maybe we've met at some point in the past. That sounds like a thing that I would have done. I don't think I was handing out Siege Rhinos at the International, but maybe I had business cards or tokens or something, but I was there in Seattle. It was pretty cool. All right, so there's a fun fact for you about this. Yes, Retrofitter Foundry, I made it 1 mana because I wanted you to build a Trinket Mage for it, and yeah, that turns out that being 1 mana makes it legacy playable, which is pretty cool. Turn those servos into Thopters, or really turn those Thopters into constructs more appropriately. Okay, thank you for your question on Trading Post, Judge Donald. Moving on to Rutro Raggy, who wants to know about Nezumi Grave Robber or Elder Pine of Jukai? Let's talk about Nezumi Grave Robber. This will give me a chance to talk about the flip card mechanic from Kamigawa. So here is Nezumi Grave Robber. This is what truly is a flip card. So some people say flip cards and mean transform cards from Innistrad. No, this is an actual flip card. These are from Kamigawa. It was something we did there, and it was kind of like the early version of double-faced cards. We did them in Kamigawa, though, and then never did them again. And the reason why, well, it's kind of twofold. The first is they actually have the opposite problem of double-faced cards. Double-faced cards, you get a lot of room to say a lot of stuff on. These cards, you have so little room. You have such little text length space to say anything on these flip cards that it's a huge issue. It was very limiting what could go on these. And then the other big problem is that the art is very hard to figure out, because basically the gimmick, in case you can't figure it out, is on the left-hand side of the is the card that you're seeing, and then when you flip it over, you get to see what's the right-hand side, or what is now the left-hand side again. But if you look at it from afar, it just looks like a weird mishmash that's hard to kind of figure out. So it's kind of a nightmare art-wise to make work. And so we didn't do any more of these, but these did inspire the double-faced cards. We still reprint them sometimes, but yeah. One other thing I'll mention that I think is really charming about this card that I love is on the front side it's a rogue, and on the back side it is a wizard. So you can you can play it with party and make it whatever you want, which is I don't know. I saw that when the party mechanic came out, and thought it was pretty funny. Anyway, let's bit about Nezumi Grave Robber. Thank you for your question, Rutro Raggy. Another one by a Torrida Commando about the Rebel Tribe, which I'll come back to at the end. Thank you so much for that. It looks like a certain random guy's internet might have died. I hope that's not the case. I hope they can come back. If not, I'm going to keep working off of the list that I have, because they're the ones tracking everything for me here. Instead, I'm going to move on to Glitchy Stitch, who I know is out there in the chat, because I see them just posting right now. Hello, Glitchy Stitch. Thank you for coming and watching. I really appreciate to all 181 of you who are out there watching and hanging out on this fine Friday evening. So let's start with Scourge of Fleets. So this card showed up in Journey into Nyx. This was a part of a cycle of cards. I think it was a full cycle that counted the... Was it a full cycle? I think it was, right? A full cycle of cards that counted the basic land types that you had. I think there was a red version of this, right? Right? The one that dealt damage or something like that. Anyway, regardless. This is something that is cool. It's got great intentions. It's a sea monster, which is great for your sea monsters deck. One of the things we've found, though, with these basic counting cards is it's pretty hard for them to get played in Commander, because a lot of folks don't play enough basics to make it happen. So usually when we make a basic counting card, we try and power it targeting a mono-colored Commander deck, because they'll have enough islands to make it work. Okay, it sounds like the only one that was missed was Grey Necromancer's Archon of Valor's Reach. I'll make sure to do that one at the end. The Dragon Dictator, the Quinn Gods. I can't remember the other ones. I'm sure if I look through Journey into Nyx, I'd find it here. I want to have my memory jogged, so I'm just gonna look through Journey into Nyx and find the other one here. If anyone knows the names of the other ones, I guess maybe there's this one, Quarry Colossus, right? It's uncommon, but this is the white one. The red one, I think, dealt damage to something. I don't remember the name of it. It's gonna bother me until I find the dragon, because I know it exists. Here it is, Spawn of Thraxes. This card. This is the thing. Great work, Flying MTG. You got there before I did. This card is kind of only good in mono blue decks, and even then in Commander, mono blue decks still play a lot of non-basics. So yeah, I don't have the card bot in here. I probably need to get that, right? That's like a thing I install on my stream somehow. Card bot MTG. I'll try and get that for the next stream. That sounds useful. This is so bare bones. It's only my second stream, so there's probably like, if there's a thing I should install on the stream, let me know and I'll try and get that installed. Cardbot would probably be a good one. Other than that, I don't have a ton to say about this card. It was meant as like one of the promos that could show up inside your box. I think it was an intro pack card, so it might have showed up on the front of an intro pack. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a great story about Scourge of Fleets. I guess I'll just say that I have tried putting this in a number of commander decks of precons, and it always just ends up not making it because it counts islands and it never hits for enough. So it made it in the Commander Legends one, the AC one, because you go so big with your lands. But other than that, that's all I got. Glitchy Stitch. Sorry, no more story for you on Scourge of Fleets. Yeah. Last time it was Experiment Courage I didn't have anything to say about. This time it's Scourge of Fleets. All right, let's talk about Ariel, Knight of Windgrace. So we're working on Dominaria, and we have a lot of ideas for tribes we could go back to, because Dominaria has had a lot of tribes in history. Of course, it had Onslaught, which was a big tribal set, and we knew we were going to do a little bit of like the classic tribes, Goblin and so on and so forth. But one that we wanted to hit up was Knights. And originally, and I've told the story before on my channel on Good Morning Magic, but originally what we were going to do was Knight Tribal was going to be the second set of the Dominaria block. As I'm sure you know, there was no second set of the Dominaria block. We decided to do another core set. We decided to bring core sets back, and that ate the second Dominaria set. So both Dominaria sets basically got fused into one Dominaria set, and we got to keep all the things we liked, and one of those was Knight Tribal. And of course, when we were making a Knight Tribal thing, we wanted to have a Lord for that. Knight Tribal is based in white-black, so making Ariel just made sense. These days, we often try to make sure that if we're doing something, we give you a commander to play it, if you want to play that deck. Unlike the olden days where there is no red-white samurai commander. Pour one out for Mother's Yamazaki, a card I made and put in Commander Legends that didn't quite make it through. Someday we'll get you that red-white samurai lord. Poor Mother Yamazaki. Anyway, that's a short story about Ariel. Otherwise, I think it's a cool card. And yeah, we kind of just fused both Dominaria sets into one and took the Knight Tribal aspect of it. Yeah, where's the energy boss? I would love to make one. The problem with energy, Shivam, is that it is so hard to just put in a set, right? It needs a lot of infrastructure. So someday, somewhere, we'll make the energy commander. I'll find a spot for it. Someday. Don't know where it's going to be. All right, let's move on to Carrot Boy. If you're still out there, Carrot Boy, thanks for watching. I think you might have came over with Jim's folks. Let's look at Spawn of Mayhem. This card had a great playtest name. Oh, I remember laughing at it so hard, and I cannot remember what it was. But this card was tried in a lot of different forms. I remember the biggest thing that was changed about this card the most is what the condition was for it growing. Like, did it always grow? Did it only grow sometimes? Yeah, Glitchy Stitch, the thing about it, to go to a question here, the thing about an energy precon, it totally makes sense. We would just want to do it in a set that has energy, because there's barely enough energy cards right now to make a commander deck with. So we want to align it with a set. We wouldn't just want to do energy out of the blue. Yeah, someday we'll do energy again, though. I feel good about it. Anyway, Spawn of Thraxes. Excuse me, not Spawn of Thraxes. Spawn of Mayhem. So we tried a lot of different conditions, if I remember right, for how it got counters and exactly what the stats were on this. This was intended to kind of be like a black aggressive card that would show up in like a red-black aggro deck, right? It was really there to enhance the Rakdos deck, which unfortunately ultimately did not really materialize. I know we really tried to get that deck to work, and it didn't really quite show up. One thing about this card in particular that's brutal are those 2 black mana symbols. Just makes the mana fixing all the more important to play like a red 1-drop on turn 1 and then black on turn 3 or something like that. You know, it's a really big challenge. Let's see what else about Spawn of Mayhem. I wish I could remember the playtest name for it because it was so good. I'll have to go and look it up later. And maybe when I put this up on my YouTube channel or something, I'll mention it. Let's see. Another thing that I think it didn't used to have Trample, I think, in the beginning. That's a thing that I think was added on. And the idea being that Trample would be really good at triggering your other Spectacle cards. This was meant to kind of like get the Spectacle ball rolling. As well as, right, the dealing 1 damage to every player, so your Spectacle was always happening. Right, this is really going to be the linchpin for your Spectacle deck. I don't have too much other than that on this card. I don't know much about the design history of it, other than, yeah, it was just meant to be a card for the Rakdos strategy. I think it's a sweet card. It's got an awesome name. That's that's Spawn of Mayhem for you. Okay, on to Skyatonic. Who wants to know about Nekusar or Time Vault? No, the NM Stores. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. So Time Vault. Okay, I'm going to tell an abbreviated version of the story, because to tell every iteration of Time Vault's errata that's like a whole Good Morning Magic video. And I should know, because I recently did an episode on errata where I wrote a section about Time Vault and I cut it. But the short version is that, here's the original card as written. And the problem with the original card as written is that it's incredibly easy to break. Basically, you just untap it once, and then you can take infinite turns. So it's so easy to break the early version, and so that you would play this with anything that untapped your artifact. You would twiddle it, and then you would take infinite turns, right? And that's just was the combo you would do. And it was like, oh, we don't really want that to work. So we looked at all kinds of different erratas. The thing that happened is one of the erratas at one point let you basically skip a turn to untap it. That was what it did. The problem with skipping a turn to untap Time Vault is this card came out in original Ravnica. Oh, wait, typing that in was a bad idea. Typing Flame is not going to get me past the card. This card, Flame Fusillade. So there's this combo deck you would play in Vintage where you would play Time Vault, you would cast Flame Fusillade, and then skip your next infinite turns, didn't matter, to untap Flame Fusillade untap your Time Vault infinity times to kill your opponent. And there's a big debate around like, well, this is a combo deck that exists, but like that's not really what Time Vault does, right? That's not what the original wording said. And I actually did a great video earlier in the week on Monday about the Nephilim and errata, which you should all go check out. It's over on my Good Morning Magic channel. And about the history of errata and how we've really fought hard to try and get things back to how they were originally templated. And so now, after a long time, we've finally got Time Vault back to more or less its original version. You can go infinite with it with Voltaic Key. That's just a combo you can pull off in Vintage, but go nuts, have at it. And long history of errata on this card. But yeah, Flame Fusillade, that was the combo piece you'd go with this. Okay, Balmon 2 wants to know about Stalking Tiger. Let's bring this up. And not the Stalking Tiger you might be thinking of, by the way. It's not the 4-mana 3/3 green card, but the 5-mana 3/3 artifact. Let's take a look at this. So Stalking Tiger is one of our holiday cards. So you might not have ever seen this card, many of you, but every year for the holidays, we make a special Magic card that we then stand out. This one's stamped Happy Holidays 2013. You can see that right here. But we make a special holiday card that we send out to people. And we send it out to influencers in the community, game stores, and also all of Wizard staff get them. I've kept some of mine to try and have a full set, but I have given a few of them away for like charity and stuff like that for good reasons. And Stalking Tiger was one of them in the year 2013. These are usually designed by like Ken Nagel, and either Ken designs them himself or he runs like we have like one meeting to design the card basically, and we do it as like a group design effort. Let's see. How many of you can name the first holiday card? How many of you know what it is? Let's put it in the chat and see if you know the answer to this question. Because a lot of people might not. A lot of people might not know, but it's got a long history. How many of them can you even name? Put it in the chat and see if you get them all right. Yeah, Stalking Tiger, super funny card, fun to play with. Not really super strong. Obviously, if you connect and draw 15 cards, it's great, but you got to get your 5-mana 3/3 through. I know some folks play this in Commander, which makes it a blast. And yeah, I just think this is great. There's one Magic player in the community, Adrian, who has a stuffed Stalking Tiger, like one she made, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah, Fruitcake Elemental, that's correct. Fruitcake Elemental is the first ever one. I have a copy of Fruitcake Elemental. I got that before I worked at Wizards. And then after that was this banger, which is not this card, oops. Which is probably one I like drafting the most in Cube, which is, why does it not show up? Oh, I see the problem. But how can I get Gifts Given to show up? I think you like this probably. Yeah, here it is. Gifts Given. This was the next holiday card, which was awesome. This is one of my favorite cards to draft in Cube. you search your opponent's library for 4 cards and new gifts given them, which is a card I absolutely adore. This is probably the best one, I think. But anyway, there's a long history of the Silverboard cards. I see a lot of you naming a bunch of them, but no one's gotten all of them. I think a lot of people are missing is Evil Presence, which is a pretty fun one. Play on the card Evil Presence, right? You've got there's this card, Evil Presence, which is of course a play on this card from the very early days of Magic, Evil Presence. Haha. Get it? It's in Wizard printed here too, but it's also in Alpha. There's Mishra's Toy Shop, which is brought up. Yeah, let's not forget Naughty Nice, right? Which is this card right here. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff over the years with the holiday cards. Fun fact, we don't just do the holiday cards for Magic. There's also Duel Masters holiday cards, which I have some of. Yeah, Decorated Knight. This is the one from Eldraine. I think here it is. Yeah, Decorated Knight, where you exchange your library with another deck. I think that card's great. Anyway, lots of cool holiday cards over the years. Gives collectors a fun little chase to try and go for. Eric is asking about Sengir Dark Baron. So Sengir. So early on when I was making Commander Legends, I was like trying to make a list of the legends we should do. Like, what are the legends we should do another round on? And Sengir was the obvious choice to me. Everyone's wanted a Sengir for a very long time. So I made a bunch of different versions. And the very first version of it that I made, I think I showed it in Good Morning Magic episode. Yeah, I had this great clip of me shouting it's Baron Sengir. You can go Google if you want. But yeah, the very first version I made was a creature that gave out these curse counters, where you like attack somebody and you gave them a curse counter and made a 2/2 vampire. And then if you attacked them again while they were cursed, you made like 5 2/2 vampires or something like that. With the idea being that they would, like, the Sengir was like cursing people, and then you would like get more vampires as you cursed them more, and you tried to curse everybody. That version didn't work out. I mean, I tried a ton of different versions for this card. Ultimately, I handed off the set to Jules without a version I loved, and was like, hey, we should do Sengir. You figure out what it should do. And this is what Jules and his team came up with. I love the fact that it is a callback to the original Baron Sengir, right? It says whenever it dies, it gets 2+1/+1 counters. And the original Baron Sengir has whenever a creature dealt damage by it dies, it gets a +2/+2 counter, which we don't do +2/+2 counters anymore, but we definitely do 2+1/+1 counters. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what's going on with the Sengir. So I also love this. Whenever another player loses the game, you gain life equal to that player's life total as the turn began. I think that's just a nice little like extra Sengir feeling thing on there. But yeah, we ultimately made him. I think, by the way, this is still not the last version we could make of Baron Sengir. This is one version, but I would be beyond happy to do more in the future. So I don't know that you've seen the last of this guy. I in fact hope we do more in the future. I also am really happy we got to do this version of it with Pete Venters, who did the original art. Pete really wanted to do the Baron again. He wrote us such in an interview, and it was great to give him the chance to do this piece. So really happy he got to reimagine the Baron as it is today. Okay, moving on from, thank you Eric for that one. There's some fun facts about Sengir the Dark Baron for you. Let's move on to Crayon Shed, who wants to hear about Feldon of the Third Path. So the question is pretty specific, actually. They specifically want to know, was it ever considered to be 5 colors? Feldon was all 5 colors in his short story. So I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is the card was designed by Ethan Fleischer. Now, Ethan is maybe the most story connected when it comes especially to the old Magic story. He knows it super duper well. In fact, he's like our go-to person whenever we have questions about Magic lore questions from the old days of Magic. So he is like the go-to guy. And he made this card. So I feel like he probably knew what he was doing and made it really really embody the character. I also know this is, when I have talked with Ethan though, this is meant to embody him at like a specific point in his life. I think this is like him trying to recreate Ashnod was his wife, whoever his wife was, trying to recreate his wife, and failing. Which is what the card mechanic represents. And I think this is a gorgeous piece and it tells like a very tragic story. And so that is a more emotional part of Feldon's life. Maybe there are versions of him that could be more colors. I think that's totally a thing that maybe someday we'll even see a version of. But this version of Feldon doing this does feel very red, that kind of ambitious thing, looking for everything. Also just because a character has access to all 5 colors of magic doesn't mean they're necessarily those colors. Right, like if you look at Nissa, she's gone through a lot of different changes of color. She has access to many colors of magic, but her card represents kind of what she's doing in the moment. Loran, excuse me, not Ashnod. Thank you very much, a certain random guy. Loran was the name of Feldon's wife. Otherwise I think it's just a brilliantly designed magic card. It's definitely super strong. Hey, Ellie, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. It's really awesome having you here and chilling with us until almost 1 a.m., so it's totally awesome. And I hope to talk with you very soon. Take care. Go give Ellie a follow if you haven't, by the way. She's really fantastic. Go check her out on Twitter, Twitch, wherever you can find her. She's great. So Feldon, I think, is like, it's a very powerful magic card, and the fact you can repeatedly use your ETB effects from the graveyard. Honestly, this card is probably over the line. It's also probably over the line that you can activate it at instant speed, because then you can block with the tokens. You can also create one at the end of your opponent's turn, and it'll stick around till your turn, which is like kind of not okay. But hey, it's a card that exists, and I'm glad Red has a pretty sweet commander. So Feldon's pretty cool in my book, even if he's probably a little bit too strong. All right, moving on to our next card today. We are going to go to, thank you, Zenelias. This is from Coalesce Apparel. You can go, I'll sit back here so you can see it in all of its glory. It's gorgeous. You can go find it on Coalesce Apparel. It's Cedric's clothing company. So I would go check it out. Lots of great stuff over there. And in the meantime, we got other cards to talk about. So I'm going to go to Blind Guardian 98, who's asking about Delver of Secrets. If they're not asleep yet, I think they're in Portugal, and it's about 6 a.m. there. So Delver of Secrets. Oh my. Somewhere around here, and I don't... Well, actually, maybe I do have it. Hold on a second. If I have it, it's going to be worth it. I might have the original playtest card for Delver of Secrets around here somewhere. I'm going to open up my playtest card binder and see if it's hiding in here. If it is, it's going to be really cool. And if I don't, then it's going to feel like I wasted your time. But let's see if I can find it. No, maybe not. I might have taken it out and put it somewhere else. Rats. Some other cool cards in here. Oh, well. I have it around here somewhere. I'd have to go digging for it more, and I don't want to take up the time to do that. But the short version is Delver of Secrets Lab Wizard, as its playtest name was called for a while. Started off really innocent. It was like a 3-mana 2/2 or something like that. Just like a totally innocent card. It was meant to be a representative of the fly trope, right? The horror movie The Fly, if you're familiar with this, where someone slowly turns into a fly. It was supposed to be that. And so it started off as 3-mana 2/2, super innocent, and then the cost just kept getting rejiggered around until it became a 1-mana that turned into a 2/2, and then a 1-mana that turned into a 3/2, and Chaos Agent, I did talk about Ariel. I did, so you can go find it in the VOD. Actually, it was a pretty cool story about Dominaria and how we fused 2 sets into one, and yeah, you can go check it out. It's in the VOD, and I'll turn this into a YouTube video probably too. You can go to catch. So Delver of Secrets, ended up being stronger than I think anyone thought. I think everyone knew there was a chance this card could get played, but I remember when I showed up, literally my first few weeks at Wizards, was people being like, "Wow, this Delver of Secrets cards is really taking over Standard. We should play test Talrand a lot," because we were worried about Talrand being good in these decks. The reason, one of the big reasons why we actually cut Flame Slash from Core Set 2013 is because we were worried about it getting played with Delver as another cheap 1-mana red removal spell. So Flame Slash did not get reprinted in that set, probably wisely so. And Delver of Secrets has gone on to be a huge card ever since. It was a 3-mana 2/2/2 that turned into like a 5/5 flyer, was the original version. If I had the playtest card, I would go take a look. But yeah, Delver's got a huge and amazing history. It's really fascinating. All right, thank you so much, Blind Guardian 98. Hopefully you were still up to hear that. Thanks for sticking around. Iron Blood, you still out there, Iron Blood? We're gonna talk about Nexus of Fate. Let's see, our Nexus of Fate. I'm gonna search for this here. All right, Nexus of Fate, the M19 Buy a Box promo card. Yeah, Roll the Bones. There was another version of it in the newest Innistrad. It was Perfect Form, I think is the name of the backside. Yeah, Aberrant Researcher, which then turns into Perfect Form. And then in Eldritch Moon, there's Docent of Perfection, which is the completing the story of turning from that form into the final iteration. So you kind of get the whole triptych. I pitched at one point that we would do like a 6-sided card as like a joke promotional material where you flip through all of them, but no one liked my idea. Anyway, maybe someone out there likes it. The list is closed. EOS VR. I've gone through a ton of cards, but feel free to follow and hit notifications. So you'll find out when the stream happens again, and I'll be happy to answer your question next time. Or maybe I already answered it about your card. I've answered a bunch of cards today, so you can go watch the VOD to see that as well. Okay, let's talk about Nexus of Fate. So, Nexus of Fate was the Buy a Box promo for Core Set 2019. Let's see. What should I say about this one, besides that it's a very obnoxious Magic card that I wish was different? Recently we had our Mirror event on Magic Arena, and this card exiled itself afterward in that version. Mirror is basically a fun event where they changed cards to be something else. This card, the problem is, it's just so easy to go infinite with this card, right? You just like mill your library and then you Nexus of Fate them into Oblivion, or you just take a bunch of extra turns in a row, you stack Nexus of Fates, you copy it, you combo kill them. So I don't think we'd want to do that anymore. Additionally, we've moved away from the unique Buy a Box promo model. We tried that for a while. The reactions to it, I mean, it did good stuff for us in terms of moving boxes, but the reaction to it by fans was not really great. So, that's not true. It was great in some ways. Some people were excited about it. The problem, honestly, I think the problem was Nexus of Fate, right? This was the Buy a Box promo that was an issue. If I could do it again, I would have put this card somewhere. Now we've got also collector boosters to help relieve this card as well, right? So if this existed now, you'd be able to find Nexus of Fate in the collector boosters. That's part of why we started putting them in there with Eldraine, I think, where King Kenrith shows up in the collector boosters. So yeah, it was fun to kind of come up with Buy a Box cards that were fun and different or whatever. Or things that we couldn't find in the set, like Rin and Siri, for example. It's like, oh, we couldn't find a place for a cat dog in the set. Well, bam, we'll put it in the Buy a Box. But it also caused some trouble, certainly. What I would like to do someday is get a non-foil version of this out there. I would really like to be able to create that, because right now, if you want to play with the card, there's only foil versions. One of the great things about collector boosters is it's created non-foil versions of cards for folks. So like Commander Face deck cards, for example, show up in collector boosters in non-foil. So I hope someday we'll be able to get you a non-foil Nexus of Fate out there. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I got to say about this card. Let's move on to Jock 8. Sir Toasty T asks, it's funny how 2 core sets had Naya Legendary Buy a Box boxes. That's not coincidental, actually. It was because we wanted to make sure that Naya... Well, the first time around with Riel, we wanted to make sure that Naya had a commander, a Brawl commander in Naya, and that was how we decided to get there. And then the second time around, it just made sense to do Naya because that was the color of cats and dogs. So that all made sense. Okay, moving on to Jock 8, who wants to know about Urza Academy Headmaster. Fun. Get to talk about a little uncard here. What is there to say about this card besides head over to askurza.com? Did you know out there that all the text is a pun? You head to askurza.com because it's a floating head. Let's see, what to say. Well, so in the beginning... Not in the beginning. Where do I want to start? So here's the deal about Urza. So Urza, super famous story character, around for a long time. Ultimately, what happened to the poor guy? Poor guy, he was kind of a horrible villain. But anyway, what happened to the poor guy is he got decapitated, but then because he was Urza, his head stayed around and talking and all that stuff. So Rosewater thought a really funny idea in Unstable would be to do an Urza headmaster, or Urza headmaster card, a floating head of Urza card. And this ties into something else Urza had done previously, which is play around with websites. So I don't know how many of you remember a similar card, but if you know the card Urza's Hot Tub, this means the flavor text on Urza's Hot Tub is wizards.com/hot tub, which I don't even know if that URL is still active. Someone out there should go onto it and see if it still is. But the important part is that it used the internet, right? It made you use the internet. And so with this Urza card, it's a follow through of like, oh, hey, go to this website, click a button, find out what happens. The idea being it would be pretty funny if also we could tweak this with time. And I know there have been times where we went in and made changes and see what we get out of them. Playtesting this card, I remember, was a total nightmare because the website didn't exist when we were playtesting it. But yeah, it's a funny card. You know, people keep asking us for an Urza Planeswalker card, and Mark will always tell you one exists, is right here. So there you go. There's some fun stories about Urza Academy Headmaster. Moving on to Mr. Burrito. Let's see. Let's go talk about Shahrazad. Roll the Bones asks, do we take design decision questions outside the current cards? Yeah, I'll take questions at the end. I'll say really fast because your question has a very quick answer. We actually do design cards with players again. The World Championship gets cards made for them. For example, you might remember Elite Spellbinder from Strixhaven, which is Paulo's card. Even has his name on it right here. So we actually have gone back to doing invitational cards. The Fervent Champion is this guy right here in Eldraine. So yeah, we actually do this again, and we've got more fun stuff lined up in the future. So stay tuned. All right, let's go on to the next card, which is Shahrazad. Sub games. We need to take a drink of water for this one. Okay, let's talk about sub games. This card is banned in Legacy. It's banned in Vintage. It's banned in Commander, and that's because it makes sub games. We basically decided sub games are not a thing we really want to do, and playing a full sub game of Magic during another game of Magic is a real process, right? Because imagine you're playing on a table. Well, where do you set up the second game? And then when you catch, presumably you have maybe 4 copies of Shahrazad in your deck. Where do you set up your third game or your fourth game? And there's a very famous, I don't know about very famous, but maybe to Gavin. There's a famous article on Daily MTG from a writer whose goal was to make as many copies of Shahrazad as possible. And you would like play like Isochron Scepter to put on a fork and then play Shahrazad and copy it and all this kind of stuff. It also makes games take forever, right? 'Cause you're playing a sub game inside your other game. And so, yeah, this kind of thing is pretty miserable if you're forced to play it. Now, if you're playing casually at home and your friends like sub games and you enjoy this kind of thing, great. Go play Shahrazad. Go play Enter the Dungeon, which is the other one. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think someone built a Panoptic Mirror deck with Shahrazad, where they would just do it every single turn, take a sub game every turn. It was 1,000 Year Storm with Shahrazad. It was just totally nightmares. Nothing good came of this. So yeah, it's bad. I don't recommend it in tournaments. So that's why it's banned everywhere. So, but one of the things I appreciate about Magic is that early on, Richard Garfield really pushed the envelope for what cards could do. And it's important that we found the edges, right? Like, to design a good game, you don't want to play it safe. You want to find the edges of your game. And this was pushing too far. But we found a lot of other stuff that was good because Richard pushed this far. So, super iconic card. Glad we don't do it anymore. Okay, a certain random guy is asking about Grist and Selvala. Roll the Bones asks, why is Goblin Game still legal? The thing with Goblin Game is this doesn't actually cause issues, because even though the text on this card, I by the way cannot believe this is a real Magic card. This is a card that's printed in a black border set, but it is ruled that in a tournament you can just name a number, right? You don't have to actually go find items. You can just like write them down and then compare numbers. So this is just comparing numbers. It's okay. Memper Maz, thank you very much. I hope your day's been good too, Memper Maz. Where are you coming in from? I'm interested in streaming more. This is my second stream. Maybe I'll do more. I don't know. Maybe I'll even do another one this weekend. We'll just kind of see where the wind blows. We'll find out. Anyway, on to more questions. I still got a lot of cards to get through here. So I'm going to go on to a certain random guy who wants to know about Grist or Selvala. I'm going to move on to Grist, because I did Selvala last time. Actually, wait. Maybe I didn't do. Which Selvala did I do last time? Oh, I didn't do. Never mind. I'm going to do Selvala, because I was on the design team for this. I contributed to... oh, you're very welcome, Chaos Sage. Thank you so much. So I contributed to the first conspiracy and the second conspiracy, and I got to work on Selvala. The part I want to talk about with Selvala is Parlay. Parlay has an interesting history, and I think is a really important design lesson. So, in the chat, don't look it up. Don't look it up. Don't cheat. In the chat, guess how many Parlay cards exist in Magic, and I'll start telling my story, and we'll get to the answer. Don't look it up, though. That's cheating. Okay? How many Parlay cards? Is there like a feature where I can ask a poll? That's like a thing, right? There's like a button where I can ask a poll. Anyway. So Parlay was a lot in Conspiracy. It was in the design handoff. It was everywhere, and it was a really cool mechanic. Like Sean Main had a cool idea for a mechanic, and he was like, "Great, we can do this Parlay thing," and we wanted to make a lot of cards with it. Everyone loved it. It kept the card flow going in the game. One of the things about multiplayer is if someone runs out of cards, it becomes kind of boring for them. So it's nice that you could parlay to find more cards. It was called a card party, by the way, was the playtest name for it. Card party. Anyway, so we made them and it was fun. And then we started realizing as we started working on the set and it got deeper into development that there was not actually that many good designs. The amount of the design space for this card, and especially in green-white, which is where we wanted to center it, the amount of design space for Parlay was insanely low. So in the end, I believe there are only 5 Parlay cards in all of Magic. Let me double check. Let me see if I'm correct here. Yeah, 5 Parlay cards. We've got Rousing of Souls, which used to be 2 mana, but we bumped it up to 3 mana. We've got Selvala. We've got Selvala's Charge, which makes 3/3 elephants. We've got Selvala's Enforcer, which grows. And we've got Woodvine Elemental, which gives all your stuff overrun, basically. So, yeah, there's only 5 cards. And so this is a really important design lesson. Before you decide to go with a mechanic and, go into it wholeheartedly, make sure there's enough material there that you can actually support the whole mechanic. We should have done that more with Parlay, and we didn't. So instead, we got this mechanic that shows up on 5 cards in all of Magic. I do think it's a cool mechanic, by the way, and there are probably a couple other cards we could make in other colors if we extended it outside of green-white. In this set, it was kind of like green-white gets Parlay, and blue-red, black get Dethrone. But even then, there's not that many more cards we could make with it. So anyway, it's still a great card, still a really cool commander. I think it's created some fun stories, but ultimately, if we could do it again, we would probably just take the Parlay cards and write them out long form, I think, instead of doing a mechanic for 5 cards. Okay, let's move on to the next card, which is Sir Cone, if you're still out there, Sir Cone. We're going to talk about Cathedral of Serra. Come on. Cathedral of Serra. This is it. This is what you want to know about. Oh, jeez. What a time Bands with Other Legendary Creatures is. You can't see it in the screen. But, yeah. Now, here's the fun part. You might not know this. You all might not know this. You might be like, wow, that's a weird card to make. Well, that's really strange. Why would they make this weird card? What if I told you? What if I told you? It's not just Cathedral of Serra. It's not just Cathedral of Serra, my friends. Let me see if I can find this. Yes, we've got, of course, Adventurer's Guildhouse, if you're interested in all your green legends banned with other legends. We've got Mountain Stronghold, if you're excited about all your red legends banned with other legends. We've got, of course, Seafarer's Key, if you'd like all of your blue legends to band with other legends. And, not to be outdone, we've got the Unholy Citadel, for all your black legends to band with other legends. Now, you have to keep in mind a few things. First of all, these are lands that do not tap for mana. So this is a land you play out, and it gives all your creatures, all your black legends, bands with other legendary creatures. Now, if you don't know what banding does, I'm not going to explain it to you right now, because the reminder text on this card is longer than text we would print on a Magic card. As a reminder, merely the reminder text for banding, which we have done, by the way, because I'm a maniac and created this card, this is the reminder text for banding right now. Bands with is even longer than banding Sliver's reminder text, which basically takes up the entire card. So it does not fit. Here's what banding does for those curious. The short version, it's actually very easy to explain. You take you take creatures, you put them in a band together, they attack together. If you block one, you block all of them. Or if you're blocking with multiple creatures that are banding, they're both blocking the same creature. But the benefit you get is you get to choose how their creature's damage is dealt. It turns out blocking is actually incredibly strong on defense, because if they're attacking with a 5/5 and you block with two 0/4s with banding, you can deal 3 damage to one and 2 damage to the other and totally obviate getting killed. So blocking was always really strong on defense. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. This card is just, there's nothing to say. I think this might be the only bands with other cards in Magic. Like, oh. You know, we try to try those edges. This is one that we get done without. I will say, all of this aside, the art is pretty sweet on Cathedral of Serra. That is pretty cool looking artwork, right? That's like very classic Mark Poole early Magic artwork. So I do totally dig that. I think that's great. Thank you for that moment, Sir Cone. I think we all were in this together. Let's move on to NM Stores. And I'm going to ask NM Stores is asking for Uro. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to ask a certain random guy, if you could do me a favor, certain random guy, and collect the people who have skipped, who submitted multiple cards, to go back to at the end. If you could just start making that list of those folks, so then I can know at the very end who to go back to. I would really appreciate it. Okay, Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. So, what do I have to say besides this card? The card is too strong. So when we were working on Theros Beyond Death, there was the idea to do these Titans. Titans are big in Greek mythology, and it also made sense to kind of harken back to that and do some new Titans, or new Titans for the first time in Theros Beyond Death. Mark Gottlieb, the set's lead designer, thought it would be pretty cool to do it. And we'd see these 2 Titans here, and then who knows, maybe in a future visit to Theros, we might see more Titans out there. I don't know if the story allows for that or not. I think the story has something to do with like Clothis, changing the destiny of something in Titans. I don't know exactly. I don't know. Anyway, we talked about a million different things. I don't know what actually happened. Anyway, I could see us doing more Titans in the future. The idea was these would be cards that could only escape, which is a really cool idea. And as a downside, because they only had to escape, or rather, the downside is they could only escape, so we had to make the upside really, really strong, of like, oh, it's a huge creature, it's cheap, it's hard to do. The problem is that getting 5 cards into your graveyard is just so easy to do in Magic, right? People get 5 cards into their graveyard all the time. So it's super easy to make this come into play, and then once it's in play, you just fall behind so quickly. It accelerates you. It finds more cards, which of course will get more cards into your graveyard to help you use Uro again. So, yeah, I mean, this card was clearly a mistake. I don't know what to say. It's banned in Standard, Modern, Pioneer, and Historic. We would do it differently if we could do it again. This was also in the Mirror event recently. Yeah, we changed that card pretty significantly. I think the change they made is you didn't gain the life, or you didn't put a land into play, maybe. I think that was the change they made. Someone out there who played Mirror more than I did probably knows the answer to this question. But yeah, maybe we'll get the other Titan someday. That could be cool. Okay, DM Canes going to Strixhaven Stadium. So when we were making Strixhaven, there were a lot of tropes we wanted to hit on from a lot of different properties. But one that we knew we wanted to do is we were making a school. We wanted there to be a sport, and we wanted to have a sport represented in the game. So we knew we wanted to make this card. I think I may have even talked about this card on my last stream. I can't remember. I went through like 100 cards. But one of the things about Strixhaven Stadium is we tried it for a very long time with this kind of like point back and forth tug of war structure. That is, as you see here, something like that. There was a version where your opponent could get points, which is more flavorful. Oh, thank you for the follow, Mustel Albina. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone out there, all 160 of you who are sticking with me. We're in hour 3 of talking about random cards you guys have sent me my way. I really appreciate you sticking around and, submitting so many cool cards to talk about, and for the following, because, I hope to stream more in the future, and please, I'd love to have you all back. It's cool to see so many actually faces. I didn't know if I'd get repeat visitors, and it's really cool to have a bunch of people in the chat who were watching last time. So kind of like creating, I know who people are now. It's kind of cool. Anyway, Strixhaven Stadium, there was a version that like you could accrue points, and even your opponent could get points on it and make you lose the game. But eventually we were like, well, we don't really want to do that because like, playing a card that could make you lose the game is kind of frustrating. So we were trying to figure out how to do it. And eventually, I don't know who it was, but someone just had the idea of, what if it was a mana rock? And that just made total sense, right? It's easy to get into decks. It's a great way to help you play this mini game. And usually like a great solution on a 3 mana card is, let's just make it on, put on a mana rock. That way it does something while you're playing the mini game. It also let you put point counters on it by tapping, which is pretty cool. Dr. Faust, thank you so much for coming by, and I hope you enjoy the VOD. And it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on here with Strixhaven Stadium. Just wanted to have a point mini game, wanted to show off the sport somewhere, and a mana rock was like the best solution. Mana rocks just get into decks, so it's pretty easy. Roll the Bones, we don't do 1 mana rocks because that would just be really, really strong. I mean, 2 mana rocks are really powerful as is, so 1 mana rock would be incredibly powerful. Anyway, I'll move on to the next card as soon as I know what it is. Here we go. Thank you so much. Squid for Brains, Jared Carthelian. Oh, I got a fun story about Jared. Jared Carthelian. So, Jared Carthelian, this is from Squid for Brains. Thank you so much for coming, Squid for Brains. So, Squid for Brains, you've been waiting patiently. Jared Carthelian, true heir. Let's talk about this. So, Jared Carthelian was an idea I had to make someone else the monarch, and then you tried to get their monarchy. I thought that'd be a really fun thing to do, a really cool idea, and it was red-green originally, just red-green. And it had the ability at the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the monarch, it gets 5+1/+1 counters. Jules was trying to, when I handed this off to Jules, he was trying to come up with the idea of making 3-color legends, which I didn't have in the original set. So he came up with Jared Carthelian and ended up moving it from green-red into green-red-white, which I thought was pretty cool. That was a good fit. Jared Carthelian, by the way, is a super deep cut. Maybe the deepest cut in the set, except for like, I don't know, Gore Muldrak or something. But Jared Carthelian is from the comic books back in 1996, 1997. So it's really cool to kind of go back into those very deep cuts of Magic lore. I really enjoyed getting to do that. It's a blast to play with, and yeah, it really captures the story, right? He's someone who wanted to go and try to get the monarchy. Roll the Bones. Do you ever jam a color symbol onto a card for the sake of commander flexibility? We try not to do it. It happens every now and then, but we try not to do it. Usually we want to make sure that it represents the color as well. Oh, after Jared, the next one should be Archon of Valor's Reach. Great. I've got a great story about Archon of Valor's Reach, so I'm glad that's what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about Archon of Valor's Reach. So, I made this card. How did I make this card? What was I doing with this card? So I was working on Battle Bond. Oh, I always love it. Starting a sentence with "I was working on Battle Bond" is like such a Gavin thing to say, but it like never stops feeling good because I just love that set so much. Archon of Valor's Reach was from Battle Bond, and was working on Battle Bond, and we basically felt like we had the draft format down, good to go. We had the Two-Headed Giant stuff mostly figured out. But the problem was getting enough cards in there that players would want to just own to want to like go and play it, right? Because if the set was just only a draft experience full of cards that made Two-Headed Giant matter, it probably wouldn't have done that well. So we wanted really to key into, okay, what can we do that would get players outside of it excited? One of those things is Commander, certainly, and we made a lot of cards in that set for Commander. But I also wanted some shots at Constructed from it. So we did what was called Run a Mini Team. And this is where someone else leads a team of like 2 other designers, so about 3 people, to try and come up with ideas. And so Ian Duke, I believe, ran this mini team for me. And his task was to come up with cool, competitive constructed playable cards and holes that we could identify. And there were a few different things that he hit on as really cool places to go. But one of them was, what if we did a card that you could fetch with natural order that would help shut down your opponents, so that the like elf decks could natural order for a card, and then you could name sorcery so you can't get wrathed. That was kind of the idea. And so I was like, that's a great idea. I made Archon of Valor's Reach, basically based on that, and then put in the set. It stuck. And the most rewarding thing to me, what I thought was super cool, is that I made it for that. They identified that reason would work. I made the card for that reason, and then it came out and was played in Legacy for exactly that reason. And you still find it in sideboards and some main decks today in Elves to natural order for, which I think is just super cool that it basically worked out exactly like we drew it up. It doesn't always work out like we drew it up in Magic design. This is one where it did work just like how we drew it up, and it makes me really happy. So yeah, that's the deal with Archon of Valor's Reach. Valor's Reach, of course, being the stadium in Battle Bond on the plane of Kylum. Yes, Ian Duke is still at Wizards. Ian Duke is fantastic. I talked with him yesterday, I think. Brother of Reed Duke. So yeah, big fan of Ian. All right, so that is, let's see, that is Archon of Valor's Reach. And now we're going to go on to Kolaghan's Command from Coral Dayton. Still out there, Coral? I know a lot of these were mentioned a while ago, but takes time. Kolaghan's Command. So let's talk about commands. The first ever commands, well, actually, to first talk about commands, we need to invent the universe. So in the beginning, there were charms. And these were all the way back in Mirage block with Vision Charm. Or actually, this wasn't the only one. There was a bunch in Mirage block. But the idea was these were effects that were not worth a full card, so you would spend 1 mana to get a choice of effects. And these, of course, ended up being much more popular, or extremely popular. So we've done that a ton of times. We've made many charms. I did actually a whole Good Morning Magic video on the history of charms you can go watch. But we did these charms. We did some also lesser known charms. For example, the ones in Onslaught, like what's the cleric one called? Oh, well, I know this one anyway. Fervor Charm, I think, is the name of the red one. Oh, Fever Charm, not Fervor Charm. How could I have gotten that mixed up? So here's Fever Charm, right, from Onslaught. We did a weird cycle of these guys where they did very weird flexible effects. We did another cycle in Time Spiral with Evolution Charm. So charms, everyone loved charms. Charms, big win. Gotta love charms. Then in Lorwyn, there was this idea of what if we evolved charms? What if we gave you 4 modes and let you pick 2? And of course, that's where we got cards like Cryptic Command, which is, an iconic card, and the whole command cycle. So when we were working on Dragons of Tarkir, we had the idea, what if we did 2-color charms? We had never done that before. And we had these kind of 2-color dragon schools, or dragon clans. So that's how we got to Kolaghan's Command. And I thought that was pretty cool. So one thing that was tricky was trying to get all these right and at the right speeds. This one is very unique, actually, because it is a discard spell you can play at instant speed. We don't normally do those because it lets you cast them in your opponent's draw step. So if your opponent has no cards in their hand and they draw a card, you can play Kolaghan's Command, make them discard a card, and then they have no cards in their hand, which is a total bummer. So that's a kind of a unique thing about this card. I'll note that people have asked us for ages for the enemy color ones of these, which of course we finally got in Strixhaven with the new cycle of commands. So that's a brief history of commands, fun stories for you. Thank you very much. All right, Blind Guardian 98. I already did one for you. So we're gonna push you back to the end. Your Life from the Loam. Actually, I did Life from the Loam in the last stream too. So I know you're asleep. Here's what I'm gonna say, Blind Guardian 98. I know you're asleep right now because you said so earlier. I did Life from the Loam in the last stream, so you can just go watch the last stream because you're asleep. It's all the same to you. So go watch the stream. Like I said, it's on my YouTube channel. All the card links are linked in the description. So go check it out. The Master Sword. Hope you're still out there. The Master Sword. Here is Prov, Spires of Order. So here's something fun. Oh, cool. Glad you're still here, the Master Sword. It's your favorite land. Wow, yeah, I also love this land. I played it as a one of in a lot of decks. So in the original Ravnica, every two-color guild had a land that was named after an important location and had an activated ability of their colors. For example, you've got ones that are probably lesser known, like Duskmantle. It's right here, the Duskmantle, the House of Shadows. All the way through ones that defined a standard format, like Vitu-Ghazi, the City Tree. Okay? This one is one of the lesser played ones, although it did see some one-up play. A couple of interesting things to mention here. First is that you'll notice these are proper nouns. Like Prov is a proper location, but it's not a legendary land. What gives? Well, I did a great video on this talking about the World Tree, but basically legendary lands are just really hard to make work because you don't want to play multiples of them in your deck, because if you draw two, you mana screw yourself, which totally sucks. So we kind of stopped doing legendary lands, which is why, or at least in mainline sets, for the most part. You'll get one every now and then. There's like the Heart of Yavimaya land that just came out in Modern Horizons 2. But yeah, we don't do them very much anymore. Prov isn't legendary, Valka's not legendary, that kind of thing. Especially back, back when this came out, the legendary rule had only just changed. Right in Kamigawa, where the legendary lands would blow each other up, so you would be LDing each other with these lands, which was a bummer. And if this was play tested before the change in Champions was made, then if you got the first legendary land, you would actually stop your opponent from being able to play theirs, which was really sad. So, yeah, that's kind of a wonky tonk thing. As far as this card goes, to me, this is a very well-intentioned card that has trouble working out, because preventing damage from a source on a land is a really powerful effect. It messes with combat really heavily. It makes it pretty frustrating to play against. So we had to cost it up to make sure you could use it. But then it's like 7 mana you have to leave untapped to stop something. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer on the Prov. So it didn't really work out. This is an example I was talking about earlier with Parlay of like choose abilities that you can cost at rates people want to play them at. Because it turns out when you make this cost 6 mana, people don't want to play it anymore because it's too weak. But if it's any cheaper, it's going to be a problem. I will say one cool thing about this is you can target spells. So you can stop their burn spells, you can stop their damage-based board sweepers, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, like you just mentioned in chat, the Master Sword. Chain Reaction, it stops that. So there is a lot of cool stuff you can do here. And honestly, it's probably a fine one-of commander card in your blue-white deck. It is just really pricey. Leaving 7 mana up, 6 mana plus this land is a huge cost to pay. But if you've got a flash-heavy deck, maybe it's all right. Hey, Miles High Club, how's it going? Is this a Miles Rodriguez? Who is Miles High Club? Do I know you? Great to have you here regardless. Thanks for coming on in. Sir Toasty, yeah, it was even worse than that with Tolarian Academy back in the day. Back in the day of Urza Saga, it was whoever had their academy first could have the only academy, right? You would play your academy, and then they couldn't play theirs. That's how the Legend rule used to work in Urza Saga block. So, yeah, very different world, very brutal. Well, you know what, Miles, thank you for coming in. Really appreciate it. Glad to have you. Even if I don't know you in person, I know you on the internet now, which frankly these days is just as good. So that's Prov, Spire of Order. Let's talk about Boggo Jam's card, which is Jester's Cap. It might not look like much now, but believe it or not, oh yeah, also one found note on Prov that's pointed out by the Master Sword is it stops hexproof, right? You just choose the source. It doesn't even target, which is pretty amazing and weird. How Azorius. Okay, Jester's Cap. You would not know it from looking at it now, but this card was a really, really big deal. Like, huge. This was like the card everybody wanted in Ice Age. It was played in the Pro Tour because capping your opponent for their combo pieces was huge. And the idea was, at the time, this was like super mega hyper strong. You have to get rid of their best 3 cards. Are you nuts? That's so powerful. Well, it turns out we know now it's actually not that strong, right? 6 mana to get 3 cards out of their deck is like not that amazing, but it goes to show how much players like this effect, because cards like Cranial Extraction, or I guess Memoricide as we call it now, are so popular. People love these cards. And so we keep making them because people love the transgressiveness of looking through your opponent's deck and taking their cards out of them. So we make them, even though they're like not very good in Commander, and they're mostly just like sideboard cards. We do keep making them. One thing that is annoying to me about these cards, and why I kind of dislike it when they're constructed, is it super slows the game down for 2 reasons. First of all, if you don't know what's in your opponent's deck, you have to look at every single card. Imagine Jesters capping somebody, especially back in Ice Age where this was often true, where you didn't know what cards some cards even did, right? It just takes forever. And in a tournament setting, you need to be able to get through the thing fast. The other problem with these cards is the information issue, which is in a tournament setting, if you do know the metagame and you do know deck lists, you can theoretically use a Jester's Cap to map out your opponent's entire hand, because you can look at their whole deck, figure out what's missing, and then figure out what's in their hand. Yeah, the problem is that takes too much time, so players trying to rush through this and do this quickly, and it's a whole nightmare. I don't like it. So it's a weird part of players like this effect, but we try to not make it too strong so it doesn't show up too often. Mostly it's nice to have it as a sideboard card in standard help stop combo decks. This is a nice thing to have around as like a one of in a standard format, just so that if there's a broken combo deck that shows up, there's like always an answer to it, basically. One other final thing I want to note is this headpiece is pretty famous and has shown up a lot of places. We have a statue of it in the office, or used to actually. I think it was sold off to Card Kingdom or given to Card Kingdom or something like that, in a charity auction. But yeah, it was a very famous early day face of Magic. There were T-shirts with this cap on it, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, and there's also, it was on the front of Unhinged. I can't pull up an Unhinged booster pack, but it was there. Yeah, Miles High Club. I talked about Muldrotha in my last stream. You can check out the VOD from it, or if you go to my YouTube channel, Good Morning Magic, there is there's a link in there in the description to all, or in the comments, to where every card is during the stream. So you can just go there, click on Muldrotha, and hear all about it, which is pretty cool. So there's some facts about Jester's Cap for you. Thank you so much, Bago Jam. Let's move on to Dr. Faust with a bunch of numbers in there. Well, Master Sword. It's my channel's there. It's got all the stuff you need to see. If you want to see a card, go for it. I mean, Good Morning Magic is kind of my baby, so go check it out if you want to. Although, who knows? Maybe Twitch will be my new baby. Hazian Tamar. This is a card I am so sad is on the reserve list, because I want to reprint it to finally make Sand Warrior tokens so badly. But this card's on the reserve list. I have tried, a fun design fact is I have tried getting Sand Warriors into Magic in other ways so that we could finally have red, green, and white Sand Warrior tokens. But man, it's a tough sell. It's such a tough sell. Great RKF artwork. Such a classic looking card to me. This is one of my favorite cards to hit in Momir Basic, because you get a ton of lands off of it, which is pretty cool. Other than that, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about this, other than it's a sweet card. It is a card I think we could totally make today. We'd probably make it a little bit different, but it's this cool red, green, white lands commander card. So who knows? Maybe someday I'll have to make a riff on Hazian Tamar. That could be pretty fun. Finally get those Sand Warriors out there into the world. So glad to get Richard Kent Ferguson back doing art for us again too. He is such a master of his craft. Gray Necromancer says they mind-slavered someone yesterday and played their Herald Horde naming Sand. Nice. That is awesome. That makes me so happy. Yes, a certain random guy says the person who put timestamps on the video asked for a story about Shalai. I actually replied to him in the comments or with a story about Shalai. So I gave him his story right away in the comments of that video. So he's got it, which is great. If you want to know about Shalai, you can go check out that video. Sir Toasty T says he or she maintains a list of unprinted tokens and loves striking them off. I also have tokens I want to come off. Someday Someday I will get that a Fieldmancer Snake token out into the world. Someday. We'll see if it happens. Yes, you can exile him with the trigger on the stack, but note that you only make the Sand Warrior tokens at the beginning of the next upkeep. So it's a weird old wording on this card. So you don't really, it doesn't really work. You know, you got to wait a turn to make it happen. Now, if you pass priority, put the trigger on the stack, and then exile Hazian on with the trigger on the stack, then yes, it works. So just know that you have to, like, you can't, like, play and sack it, right? You got to wait a turn, which I think you were alluding to in your comment anyway. Okay, very good. Let's move on to Ragrock. Wants to know about Pelukernos, World Eater. Paul is what we called this card in playtesting. We shortened it to Paul K. Ranos. I don't know why, it was just really funny to us. What does there say about this card? It was a 4/4 for a while, or something like that, or 5/4 for a little while. It also, for a long time, was GGX on the monstrosity, which was extremely strong. This card was the face card. One of the big problems with this card is problems in a way you wouldn't think about it. It was the face card of the dual decks, Heroes versus Monster dual deck. In fact, I have it right here. And because of this, that deck was like a preview for Theros. So it released before Theros released, which means we had to actually lock down what Pelukernos did before Theros was done. So we had to lock it in really early. And so we tested this card a lot early on to try and get it right, because it was going to be a big problem if it was wrong. Now, I do have something kind of cool to show off here. And once again, I might look silly. But I think I still have this in here. Here it is. Check this out. Here is, it's going to show up. Oh man, I'm not using my nice camera because of the problems earlier in the stream. You might not be able to see it that well, but we'll see if it shows up. Here is, it looks kind of crappy on this webcam. I'm sorry. For you, those who weren't here at the very early part of the stream, my camera died. I don't know why it wasn't plugged in properly. I was like troubleshooting it and then decided, screw it. I'll just use my kind of worst webcam and run it through this, which is why the quality is a little weaker tonight. Sorry about that. But I don't have the great, it's kind of hard to see. But anyway, you can see on this version, it was 4 toughness, right? It was 5/4 originally. And then also, maybe easier to see, here's a playtest card version of it after it turned into a 5/5. This is just a blank, and you see I just wrote Paul. There's Paul right there. Paul K. Ranos himself hanging out. You can see that I changed the power toughness on it. Looks like it was a 6/6, which is frankly absurd. I don't know why we ever tried it as a 6/6. But you know, that's why we play test the cards. So good times with Paul K. Ranos there. Cool, right? I love having these playtest cards around. At some point, I'll have to like redo my playtest card binder. But anyway, good times. Hopefully that you enjoyed. That was a fun little treat. I'm sorry my nice camera wasn't rolling today, but next time. I don't know what happened with it. I'm gonna have to troubleshoot it because it can't just be dying on me during streams. I wonder if it like got too warm or something, because it's currently, okay, so it is almost 11 p.m. here, and it's 83.5 degrees inside this room. So my camera might just not like that. I don't know. All right, let's talk about Pelaka Worm next. This was requested by Hans EX. Thank you, Hans. Let's see. Pelaka Worm. Let's talk about upshifts. Let's talk about Rise of the Eldrazi. So Rise of the Eldrazi is a pretty powerful Magic set. It has cards that common that should have, it has commons. Actually, there's a refrain that we've used inside the building, which is its common should have been uncommons, its uncommon should have been rares, it rare should have been mythics, and its mythics maybe shouldn't have been printed, because it has some really powerful stuff going on. And Pelaka Worm wasn't uncommon in Rise of the Eldrazi, where 7 mana was a lot easier to access, and you know, you're playing big fat ass all over the place. But this card was like the best uncommon you could draft, pretty much. It was so good. It came down, it replaced itself when it died, it gave you 7 life, it trampled. It went toe-to-toe with the Eldrazi, which was pretty impressive. So when we brought it back in Core Set 2019, there was a big debate over could have upshifted it. Not all the mythics shouldn't have been printed, Eric. It's a joke. Like, that's a joke. But just in terms of like if the card is common, like Flame Slash, Stagger Shock, those are like not reasonable commons, right? They're totally ridiculous. But the limited balance of Raziel Drazi is the discussion for another day, perhaps. I played in this Pro Tour, and I have some thoughts on the limited format. Anyway, Palaka Worm. So there's a big discussion in 2019 as to if this could be a rare, because it was an uncommon. And then we're like, well, could we bump it up to rare? Will people be upset about this? Ultimately, it was the right thing for game balance, so we bumped it up to rare. I think ultimately, it's the right thing for game balance, and it shouldn't be an uncommon in that set. But it was so disappointing to people that I don't know that we should have done it. I could see us doing it again, but it was kind of disappointing. You know, people just like, well, you gave me this uncommon in a rare slot that like isn't like played and constructed. It's not like, oh, well, this used to be an uncommon, but now it's it's not Aether Vial, right? It's not Aether Vial level. It's just like, well, it's an okay card that maybe will get sideboarded. So I don't know if we would do that again in retrospect. But I do think it's a sweet card. Like, rarity aside, I love Palaka Worm. And yeah, I don't know. Big fan of this card. I've cast a lot of Palaka Worms in my day. I've sideboarded this card. I've cast it in limited. It's great. I put it in a mystery booster because I love it so much. Now let's go on to Whereafter with Frenetic Efreet. Okay, Frenetic Efreet. Yeah, Frenetic Efreet is a pretty wild Magic card. When damage stacked, as the Zaya MTG in chat is alluding to, it was pretty fun because, hey, my Efreet was going to die anyway. Might as well take a coin flip chance at getting it back. The thing that's wild about this card, though, is the wording on it. And I talked about Zendersplit and Okwan earlier, so you can tell this is near and dear to my heart. The deal with Frenetic Efreet is that you can flip a coin even if it's not in play. So with Frenetic Efreet, because of how it's worded, you can pay 0 to flip a coin as many times as you want. And even if the Efreet is phased out or dead, doesn't matter, you just keep flipping. So in a coin flip matters deck, like say Zendersplit Okwan, you can use Frenetic Efreet to get infinite triggers off of it. So you can, I wouldn't recommend infinite because you'll die to Zendersplit. Drawing cards, but you choose your number, right? If you want to draw 60 cards and double Okwan's power 60 times, I don't know how big that makes Okwan. Some of the math will do it. It's three to the factor of 60 or something like that. I don't know. Someone knows the math term. I'm not a math person. I study creative writing, but anyway, it's big. So yeah, you can combo kill people with that. And unfortunately, it's on the reserve list, so you can't really get that. Can't really get that out again anymore, and we wouldn't do it anyway because it's worded so weird. But yeah, that's a fun fact about Frenetic Efreet. We would not, these days, we would change it. So we actually made a card in Time Spiral, or I think it was the second set of Planar Chaos, called Frenetic Sliver. This is a sliver that gives all your slivers the Frenetic Efreet ability, basically, which is pretty funny. But note that this first line of text, if this permanent is on the battlefield, or in the original, if this is in play, flip a coin. So it doesn't work if you can't just flip 500 coins, right? You have to actually have it in play. So we did fix it on Frenetic Sliver later on, which is pretty funny. Can you still activate this if the opponent has a Ley Line of Sanctity in play? Yeah, it doesn't target in the Oracle text. So yes. So Sir Cone, the deal is basically if you can just activate the 0 ability, hold priority, activate it again, and so on. So you activate it 6 million times, or however many you want, and then all those will resolve, but if the freak goes away, the ability is still on the stack. So then they just resolve in order, and you will flip a bunch of coins and presumably win a lot of those flips. So pretty wild stuff. You can't activate it once it dies, but by that point, there's a bunch on the stack. So. Right, after the first resolution, you can't anymore. It has to be in play to put the flips on the stack, but once they're on the stack, you're good to go. Thank you very much for that, wherever. We're going to go to Rodrigo LQ with Kamal, Heart of Krosa. Let's look at Kamal. Did I talk about this one last time? Yeah, so I talked about Kamal in the last video. What can I say differently this time around? Well, one thing I want to mention, and I called that out last time, but I was going to say it again. This fixes one of the problems with the green Kamal. So the other green Kamal, Fist of Krosa, is it can make your opponent's lands 1/1 creatures. The problem is the best thing to do with that was actually kill off all of your opponent's lands. You would Goblin Sharpshooter them all the way, or something like that. So this Kamal fixes that by only allowing you to target your lands. It casts Overrun at the beginning of your turn, which is notable because Overrun is a card that showed up in a block Kamal was in. It showed up in Odyssey, right? Yeah, here's the Odyssey version. Showed up here in Odyssey, which is the block that Kamal was first featured in, which is pretty cool. Oh, thank you, Roll the Bones. I'm glad you liked the errata video. I thought it was great. If you haven't gotten to watch it, I think it's a great talk about the history of errata in Magic and the Nephilim. So his ability is he casts Overrun, and it's super cool. He can be partnered with Jessica, who is his sister. This is Mythic. It's an I win commander in Limited. If you get out to 8 mana and you cast it, it's pretty hard to lose. But one of the things we've been trying to do is make bigger commanders better, because given infinite time, we'll just keep pushing down on commander mana costs, and you'll just play all the best cheap commanders and not play the big ones. So making really awesome, big, expensive commanders is an important thing that we're trying to do now. So there's some fun facts for you about Kamal. I also encourage you to go back and watch my previous video. Once again, go to Good Morning Magic, go to the YouTube channel, go into the comments. You can go straight to Kamal, and there's a couple stories there I tell too about the other versions of Kamal and his story, which you might enjoy. Speaking of Kamal, who doesn't love talking about Kamal's Druidic Vow? This one is from Elsid06. If you're still out there, Elsid06, thank you very much for the suggestion. We're hitting the home stretch right now. How many cards have I gone through so far? A certain random guy. You're keeping count? Kamal's Druidic Vow. So when we were working on Dominaria, I'm going to talk about legendary sorceries, because I think legendary sorceries are very interesting. When we were working on Dominaria, we came up with the idea to do a bunch of legends, and we were going to do historic and all this stuff. So then Dave Humphreys had the idea, and even actually in design, we even had this idea, but Dave Humphreys really had this idea too about what could we do legendary spells? What does a legendary instant or sorcery look like? And we tried a lot of things. The first thing we tried was basically a Highlander card, or a commander style thing, right? You could play with one copy in your deck. The challenge was it was really hard to verify in tournament settings, because if you were playing 2 copies of Kamal's Druidic Vow in your deck, well, I guess this one, they'd probably know if you hit another off it maybe, but so there'd be some risks, but still, your opponent might not be able to check you very much for it. So that didn't work out. Then we tried a version that was pretty interesting, which is a legendary sorcery. You couldn't cast if another one was in your graveyard, right? So you could cast the first Urza's Ruinous Blast, but then you couldn't cast the second one because it was already in your graveyard. But you could use cards like the Historic Tome to exile it from your graveyard and then cast another one. Roll the Bones, yes, you could. You have to write down on your deck list in tournaments, yes. But if I'm an unscrupulous player who wants to try and get an edge, I could play 2 copies in my deck, and I would probably only ever draw one of them at a time, So, unscrupulous, but we have to think about those kind of players when we were designing Magic, unfortunately. So then we tried this graveyard version, which was kind of okay, but it was also kind of frustrating because, you would cast the card and you literally couldn't cast another one a lot of the time. And it was just... It made you feel bad for playing these cards in your deck, because eventually your hand would be like, 2 Kamal's Druidic Vows with 1 in your graveyard. You're like, well, this sucks. I can't do it. So I think it was Dave Humphreys that came up with this implementation of only being able to cast a legendary sorcery if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. So great work, Dave. I think it's a really cool way to do the mechanic. And I love personally that it feels like that character is casting this spell, right? Like when I have Kamal in play, or even if I just have like Jessica in play or something, and they cast Kamal's Druidic Vow. That's super cool. Yeah, we've got a few more cards to go. Let's go to Tendershoot Dryad next, which is from Electrotal, that's Shivam Bots. I don't know if Shivam's still out there. Yeah, this shirt is from Coalesce Apparel. No, I'm not ending yet, Jace. I'm going to be on for a while. There's just a lot more cards to get through here. So I'm just trying to get through all the ones that have been requested already. And yeah, the list is closed for tonight. So you're welcome to watch. There's still a lot of cool stuff happening, but I'm done taking requests for the rest of the night. Although who knows? Maybe I will still, maybe I'll still answer your questions later on, onesie twosie. We'll just kind of see how it plays out. Let's talk about Tendershoot Dryad though. So this card is of course inspired by another card that makes a Saproling every turn. That of course is Verdant Force. This is a very iconic card. all the way back in Tempest when this premiered. Believe it or not, this was the premier reanimation target back in the day. Yes, if you can imagine it, it wasn't Gristlebrand or something like that. You would quake in your boots when someone like reanimated Verdant Force on turn 3. You know, that was the scary thing to do. And it made a Saproling every upkeep, not just one upkeep, but every upkeep. Verdant Force and also inspired cards like the Force Cycle, like Baleful Force. It's pretty cool. But I digress. Let's talk about Tendershoot Dryad. So this was inspired by that, and a really natural thing to do with Ascend is create a token maker because you'll naturally get to 10 permanents. So it made a lot of sense to do, and with the uptick of Commander, it seemed like it would be a thing that would be pretty popular. And turns out the answer is it is. It's a pretty popular Commander card. It was really brutal in Brawl, and in Limited paid the price a little bit, as this card was extraordinarily hard to defeat in Limited. I don't really think this card changed much. I think it might have been like maybe a 3/3 at some point or something else. I don't know. Sorry, these missions are closed, Margini. I apologize. What I'm probably going to do, I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to finish answering these questions. Then I'm just going to like hang out and chat a little bit. I might draft on Arena. So if you want to do a draft together, see how I draft, tell some stories about the set, please hang out too. And there's still a bunch more cards to get through. So, and always, Marginis, I encourage you to subscribe. Follow is the word they use on Twitch, I guess. I have to get my terminology right. Because then when I do this again, it's my second one, I'll probably do a third. You'll know where to find me. Okay, Tendershoot Dryad. Yeah, I guess that's basically all. I think it might have be a 3/3 at some point, but I don't think this card changed very much. I think it was basically designed to do what it did, and it did it well. So that's the story there. All right, now to go through the remainder of the list here. These are all the peoples who I shifted down to the bottom. A certain random guy, I have some of this list. Others might have gotten on it. If you could re-up that one more time for me, I would appreciate it, just so I can make sure I get to everyone's cards if they get multiples. Let's go to Kitkin Guy, who asked about Turn to Mist. To me, this is just a really nice card. Really nice, elegant hybrid design. Finding good hybrid designs is really, really hard because, especially on spells, finding hybrid space at color share can be really difficult. Blue and white both blink or flicker, I guess is what this card is doing. Yeah, flicker, right? What's the end of turn 1? That's flicker? Yeah. Turn to Mist flickers. So it's great. It's just a really elegant design, and really happy with this. You know, it was kind of weird to me that both this and Mist Meadow Witch were in the same set. I'll pull up Mist Meadow Witch here. But that really speaks to the problem of hybrid-based sets. You just don't have enough tools in your toolbox. You look for blue and white overlap, and you're like, well, it's blink and flying. And I guess we're back to blink again. You know, you start running out really fast. So we've talked about 3-color hybrid mana mango TCG, but there's a lot of challenges with it, not least of which is the mana symbols would be pretty gnarly. So maybe someday it'll happen. We'll see. But yeah. Other than that, yeah, I just think this is a really well-designed Magic card. It's a simple common. It works super well. Love it. I love that they reference Mist Meadow Witch in the flavor text too, calling to their other card, which is pretty nice. Alrighty. Let's go on to our next card here, which is Tomo Kratos. This card's got a pretty funny story. This is from Kirby.exe, who, I don't know if they're still here, but they were here earlier in the stream chatting, and pretty awesome. All right, so, yeah, Scry is also blue-white hybrid, but Pure Sight Marrow did that in that set, which is pretty cool. Okay, Tomo Kratos. So, Theros, a set about Greek mythology, okay? Greek mythology. Love that Greek mythology. Who here thinks Krakens are Greek mythology? Raise your hand. People out there raising their hands, making their thoughts. Yeah, it was in the Commander Legends deck. It was in the blue-green deck. Great Necromancer had some sea stuff. But yeah, they're not at all. They're Norse mythology. They're absolutely correct. Here's the deal, though. And I actually have a whole presentation. I have a whole presentation about this that I gave to people, to a class of students. But Krakens are not traditionally Greek. But there's a movie called Clash of the Titans, which came out in the 80s, which has a lot of different myth creatures fighting each other, like Medusa, and it's got Pegasus, and all this stuff, etc. And then also a Kraken shows up. And because of this, in people's consciousness, Krakens are Greek, because in Clash of the Titans, it's a Greek mythology movie, a Kraken showed up. Release the Kraken and all that. Nope, not Greek at all. But because it's in pop culture as Greek, we tried to get that into the set. Because people thought of it as Greek. And of course, we're making our own spin on Greek mythos here. So that's kind of what happened there. I'm not going to reference a terrible remake, Eric. Come on. I've got dignity. That's the... Yeah, let's not talk about that. I mean, to be clear, the 80s one is also not good, but it's at least an 80s movie, so it gets a pass on some things, right? The new one is just like, you made this in the year 2018 or 2017 or whatever. You could have done a lot better with such great source material. Anyway, yeah, as Nietzsche points out in the chat, there's a great Ristic Studies video, who, if you do not follow Ristic Studies, you got to go check him out. Sam is amazing. Magic Man Sam. So, yeah. Go check that out. But that's my fun Tomocratus story. Other than that, this last ability was really hard to write. I think we tried to make it so that only their untapped creatures, only creatures that had to block it, but it was too hard to write. So now if you have any creatures tapped, you can't block this, which is pretty wild. 2010, 2017, what's the difference these days, frankly? I don't know the difference. Okay, moving on to A Torre de Commando. He wanted a pro player funny story from back when I played. What's a good story? Okay, I'll tell you a story. I'm 15 years old, and I'm playing in the JSS. Okay, and the JSS is, and there's still a couple cards after this, but I don't know. Story was just in the queue that was made, so I'm going this. I used to play in the JSS, and if you don't know, the JSS was a thing called the Junior Super Series. This is where people 16 and under could go and play in events for scholarship. I paid for a lot of my college this way, which is really cool. Oh, thank you, Mango, for the follow. I really appreciate that. Thanks out there to everyone who's followed tonight. So the deal with this tournament series, though, is if you play in a pro tour, you're not eligible to play in the JSS anymore. So I was not interested in going to the pro tour. But what I was doing was, I was like, well, I'll use a PTQ to practice. Okay, so I'll use this local PTQ. It's coming up. I'm gonna go practice for my JSS. So I go to play in the PTQ, and I'm playing this like red, black, green deck called Aggro Loam. It was an extended deck back in the day, and you would basically use life from the loam to get back your cycling lands as your draw engine. And then you would also, here's the brutalizing card though. You would play this card that most people probably don't know about, called Destructive Flow. I played this in my deck. So you would play this on like turn 2 off of Birds of Paradise, and often the game would just be over because your opponent would just have to sack a land every turn and you were playing a bunch of basics. Additionally, the deck also played Devastating Dreams, which blew up all their lands for 2 mana. You pay 2 mana, discard a bunch of cards, they discard all their lands. And then the key card here was, this is before Tarmogoyf, okay? So the key card here was Terravore, which is a 3-mana creature that would get bigger when lands would die. So you would play Terravore, then you would Devastating Dreams, everyone would sack all their lands, but your Terravore would live and you would kill off your opponent really, really fast. So it was this really cool deck. I was super nice, everyone loved it. Anyway, played it in this PTQ, and I'm just there to like hang out, right? I'm just there to practice for the JSS. But something goes weird. I just keep winning. Like, I'm on a hot streak, and everything that can possibly go right goes right. I play against Mind's Desire, played by Rashad Miller, who Mind's Desires for 7 into a Mind Desire for 12, and hits 12 lands on his Mind's Desire, right? It's like everything that could break my way is breaking my way. And so eventually, I'm in the top 8 of the tournament. Like, you go the whole way in the top 8, right? I remember I cast Devastating Dreams and do a deck list that at the time played 4 copies of a Spell Snare. I just cast it naked, and they didn't have the Spell Snare, right? Like, I just like all this stuff. So I go to the top 8. Round 1 of the top 8. My opponent plays Blood Moon on turn 3. Now I've got some basics in my deck, but I've kept the hand with only fetch lands, right? So I'm gonna be screwed. Except I draw runner, my 3 basic lands, which I have like 3 of in the deck. I draw Swamp, Mountain, Forest, okay? So I win through a Blood Moon, and my opponent is just like so unhappy about it. I go to the semifinals, And as I sit down to play against my semifinals opponent, the judge comes over and is like, your semifinals opponent has been disqualified. He won his quarterfinals match. The other guy who was in the quarterfinals like left the building. We can't contact him. And then it was determined afterwards that he was cheating and we disqualified him. Okay? So I win my semifinals match on a disqualification. So then I go to the finals. And so I get to the finals, and like I said, I'm not intending to go to the Pro Tour. Like, I have no intention of playing in this Pro Tour. I don't need or want this invite. Fortunately, there's a thing you can do in the finals of a tournament where you can choose to split the split the prize. Where basically one player gets all the boxes and all the cards, and the other player gets the invite for the Pro Tour. That way, someone who doesn't want to go hasn't opted out of it. And so I'm like, great, I'm just going to sit down, be like, hey, give me both your boxes. You'll take the invite, which is like an amazing deal, right? Because you always have wanted to go to the Pro Tour. It was a flight to Japan, right? It was all good. So it was a free trip to Japan. Clearly, they were going to take that. So I sit down. I'm prepared to be like, hey, give me the boxes, and you can go to the Pro Tour. And before I can say anything, my opponent sits down and is like, hey, look, I'm not going to go to the Pro Tour. Do you want to give me the box for the invite? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go to the Pro Tour. Will you give me the box for the invite? So we're sitting around, and all of our opponents from the semi and quarterfinals are watching us have this conversation. Like, what is happening? I fought all day to get here, and the finals is between two people who don't want to go to the Pro Tour. So we like jockey back and forth for a little while. Like, is there any way we make this work? Would you go? And I was like, hey, look, whatever, like maybe give me the box. And he's like, well, maybe I'll go. Who knows? Whatever, right? So we play it out. And the thing is, the matchup is horrible for me because I'm playing a deck based around basically casting Devastating Dreams, a 2-mana card, which I have to discard my entire hand to play, and Life from the Loam, which is a 2-mana card that I have to cast and keep going. Yeah, we did talk, Tori de Commando, about playing the match, and the loser got the Pro Tour invite, which I thought was very funny. But no, we decided to play for the invite. And so my deck's based on these two cards, okay? And my opponent is playing this card. It's this new thing from a set that just came out, Cold Snap. No one else is doing it yet. But he's playing this little card called Counterbalance, okay? Along with a card called Sensei's Divining Top. No one was doing this. I know it sounds like everyone's doing it now, but no one was doing it back then. Thank you for the follow, Lord of the Iron Forge. I really appreciate it. No one was doing this. And this is like a horrible matchup for me because my most important card's cast 2. I'm all about loaming, and I want to play against this Counterbalance guy. So I know I've got like no chance of winning anyway, so whatever, I just play. And of course, he mulligans to 4 in game 1 and 3 in game 2, and I take the match. It's like the most improbable thing ever, right? So I have this Pro Tour invite that I don't want. And I'm like, what am I going to do about this? So of course, like time goes on and I start thinking like, maybe I should go, right? And it's in Japan. It's a free plane ticket to Japan, and I'm 15 years old. I've wanted to go to Japan my entire life, right? And so, everyone wants to go to the Pro Tour. That's like the dream. So I'm like, oh, should I go? Should I not go? And I talk to my friends, my family, and people are like, you should go. Some people are like, you shouldn't go. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I should be responsible. I should be a good college student. I should stay at home. I've got 3 more years of JSS left. That's like, 30, that's like, for me at that point, I mean, it was basically guaranteed like $30,000 to $40,000 in scholarship money. I should just stay put. I'm going to not go to Japan. Okay. So I waive my invitation and I don't go. And I feel like I'm done. I'm taking the moral high ground. I'm going to be good for college. It's going to be great. I don't go to Japan. A month after the Pro Tour happens, they cancel the JSS. So ultimately I won a Pro Tour invite, chose not to go, thought about it, chose not to go. And then the thing I chose not to go for got canceled. So it was a bit of a blow up. But like I always say, it's a sad story, but it does have a happy ending because now I've been at Wizards of the Coast for 10 years and making Magic cards. So it's pretty awesome. I have a great time. And honestly, I was probably going to play like a really bad deck in Japan anyway. So it's all good. Good times. Thank you for asking for a pro player funny story. Hopefully you enjoyed that, Attori de Commando. Next up, we got another question from Attori de Commando, which is a question about the Rebel tribe. Any details? We're almost at the end of the list too, which is pretty amazing. So Lord of Ironforge, the list is closed. We've got a few more that I'm going to get through. I've been going for about 4 hours now, but I will say I'm going to stick around for a little bit after I finish this list. So I might be able to answer a question about Tireless Tracker, because I made that card, so I feel like I might be able to say something about it. So stick around. We'll see what happens. Okay, talk about Rebels for a second, though. Attori de Commando asked for it. Will Rebels ever come back? We talked about it for Kaladesh, right? So we made this card Frontline Rebel, and there was this whole Rebel theme happening in Kaladesh. We talked for a long time about if this very card should be a Rebel. The problem was we felt like bringing the Rebel type back without bringing back the Rebel mechanic would be disappointing for people. So we opted not to. I think if there's ever a point in the future to bring back the Rebel mechanic, we would certainly make new Rebels for it. The problem with the whole mechanic, and if you're not familiar, I'll bring it up here, is that it's about not playing your cards, which is pretty sad, right? So here's Ramosian Sergeant, a really iconic one. Rebels, you could tap and pay some mana for to go search your deck for a Rebel that costs more mana than them and put it into play. So you basically just keep saying go. At the end of their turn, you would get a Rebel, and if they played a spell, you would counterspell it, and you'd build up your army this way. Counter Rebels was the deck to play back in the day. And yeah, it was just kind of sad that, you were basically encouraged to not play the cards in your hand. So we're not huge on the mechanic, but I could see it returning in an appropriate set, a master set or something like that. Yeah, as Nate Dog 2 says, poor mercenaries. Let me tell you about two mechanics. Which would you like to play? Would you like to play the Rebel mechanic, where the cards search for cards with higher mana cost, so you're using your cheaper cards to go find your more expensive cards? Or could I interest you in the mercenaries? And you're probably like, whoa, what do these mercenaries do? Do they do something very interesting? Well, let me tell you, the mercenaries go find cards cheaper than them and put it into play. Now, still, to be fair, you are getting free card advantage out of it, so you can't complain too much, but it's like you're not even comparable, right? Like, who is like, yeah, these two things, we'll make one tribe that searches up and one tribe that searches down and see which is better. It's like, well, the one that searches up. I don't know what to tell you. So mercenaries were kind of a joke, unfortunately. Okay, so there's your question for the Commando. Afterwork 3 asked about Assassin's Trophy. Nice one. Okay, talk about Assassin's Trophy. So here's the deal with this card. Assassin's Trophy, I made this card. It was called, do I actually have it here somewhere? I wonder if I have this one in my binder on hand. I don't know that I do. I haven't updated my binder in a hot moment. Yeah, I don't think it's in here quite yet. I do have it somewhere in this house, but I don't have it on me. Anyway, it was called, I actually don't remember the name off the top of my head. It had a playtest name that I really loved. Anyway, but I made this card as a thinking back to Abrupt Decay, and when I made it, I was like, this card is probably too strong, but maybe it'll be okay. Let's give it a try. And I sent it over. Oh, it was called Burst with Life, Burst with Death, which I thought was a pretty funny name. So I handed it over, and it was almost exactly what you see here. And it's very, very, very rare that you have a brain to print card like this. The only thing that changed in the entire time working on this card is that it could only target your opponent's stuff. Originally, the design could target your stuff, so you could ramp a little bit if you wanted to, Path to Exile style. But it was decided to only target them, so that you couldn't. It was like just as a tiny power knob, basically. Other than that, it stayed basically brain to print, which for like a constructed level powerhouse early in design is pretty impressive. So I'm really proud of this design. I think that's kind of cool, and I love that it deals with lands. Right, you can kill off their Maze of Ith or something, which is really nice. So there's a story about Assassin's Trophy for you, F-Shark 3. Exidian wants to know about Mere Battlesphere. Which is pretty cool. Mere Battlesphere, Battle Ball, as I always like to call it. It's a big colorless card. This is I feel like this is like a default commander card. Like when I'm building a commander deck, thank you for coming, Authority Deck Commando. Thank you for all your questions. I really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around for so long. And to everyone who's still here, you know, we've been going for 4 hours. There's 135 of you out there. Thank you so much. Mere Battlesphere, this is like a de facto commander card, right? When I'm building a commander deck and I need a big finisher in any deck, I'm just like, bam, this is great. It goes wide, which is totally awesome. And it's a mirror tribal. What's not to love? What's not to love about that? I would love to do a mirror commander. I looked into doing a mirror commander when I was working on the Saheeli deck, actually. My first pitch for Brutaclad was it would be a Mirror Lord, like a blue-red Mirror Lord. But the reason why we didn't do it is everyone was like, that sounds cool, but it would be sad if you couldn't play your 5-color mana mirror with it, right? You want to play your Iron Mirror and your Copper Mirror and all the different mirrors. So someday, if it ever makes sense to do a 5-color Mirror Lord, that's when you should do. And when you're making Magic cards, you have to think on like a very long scale. Like, yep, it's not right today. Maybe sometime in 15 years or whatever, it'll be the right time to make it. So I don't know when, but someday I bet we'll make a 5-color Mirror Lord. It's just a matter of time. I think that'd be pretty cool. Other than that, I mean, I think it's just a great solid card. It's got an awesome design on it. And it's really important for us to have big colorless threats for commander deck building so that you can play a card and so that you can play a card like this in any deck, right? No matter what deck we need, there's always a finisher around. So I'm always keen to make more cards like this in commander decks. I was kind of hoping that like Ancient Stone Idol, if you all know this card, would become this. Where it'd be like a card that any deck could kind of play. It didn't really catch on as much as I was hoping it would, though. But yeah, that's the story behind Mere Battlesphere. And with that, we have made it to the end of the list. A certain random guy, what is my final count of cards that I went through in this list? I think it's like probably over 80, 85 or something like that. It's a lot. It's quite a few cards. I honestly can't believe I made it through. Now, what we're gonna do next is I'm actually gonna boot up Arena. I'm still just gonna take questions, happy to chat. And if we were to do a draft, I kind of want to do a draft anyway, so why not do it with a bunch of friends here who can tell me why I'm doing dumb things. 85 cards. That is awesome, a certain random guy. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Certain random guy asks, since this is the last card, they'll ask a question. Thank you, Exidian, for coming. I appreciate it. Have a good night. What is my favorite Planeswalker from a flavor standpoint? I mean, I identify the most with Jace because I cosplayed him, but I also really love love Tamio. I think her flavor is really interesting. So yeah, those are the ones that pop into my head. So awesome, and I'll kind of cut right to the chase. The 3 cards in the secret lair are we've got Muldrifter, Metalwork Colossus, and Craterhoof Behemoth, and all of them have art inspired by the kids, which is so cool to get to work with them and, like you said, bring their ideas to life. So normally we write art descriptions that are really long for the artist, you know, all kinds of really intricate stuff.